What up, internet peoples? As you can see, we have Q-052, I'm not really sure, but
052.
052 it is. We have him in the house. This is super exciting. My name is Holden Stephan Roy. This is Bridge the Gap. This is the show where we talk to interesting people such as yourself, and we like to go through your life story and extract knowledge nuggets along the way so that we can all better our understanding of the world and etc. etc. So, with all that, we like to start it off with a proper opening question, but as a prelude to that question, if you could just kind of briefly tell us who you are, just like your name, a little thing, but then tell us where you're from and like the sense of where you start your life, because the
Okay.
beginning question is going to take us back there.
Cool, man. So, Quentin Kondo. I'm a member of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. My community is Giskabigia, and that's on the east coast. That's in the Gaspé Z, right here in Quebec. But if you know the Mi'kmaq Nation, we spread all the way down into the states, all eastern, all east coast. My father's full Mi'kmaq. He's from Mi'kma'ki. He's from that land. My mom is actually Irish American, so her family came over from County Mayo, Ireland, to New York City, and they migrated. They worked their way up north to the Boston area, and that's where my father met my mom when he was out there working in construction. So that was back in the 70s, and so I grew up a little bit back and forth inside the reserve and outside of Boston, back and forth as a kid. So
That's an
that's
interesting start. That so with that, I'm gonna go through my opening question and just keep in mind that it's good to remember that, like, you know how the New York people go, "Nah, I mean a lot," and they think you know what they mean, but usually you don't know what they mean. Just pretend that
yeah,
most people will not know what you mean in moments like that. So with
yeah.
that, it's a little bit of a story, and it starts with my girlfriend, and she's washing the dishes one time, and she's got her phone out and she's playing that Black Eyed Peas song. I got a feeling. Ooh. She's vibing, she's dancing, she's doing her thing. And I look at her and I start to wonder to myself, when in the fuck did this song become chores music? Like, if you really, really think about this song and you run it back like 10 years, this is the middle of the night, everybody's having fun, jumping up and down party song. And then 10 years or so goes by. The song doesn't change at all because it's a song, right? Like, it's just what they do. But we change so much as our lives that the context and our relationship with the song evolves into this thing that we put on when we're doing chores or working out or some other boring crap, and we want to go back to the fun times of our younger days, which then got me thinking about the little ones, and they have no idea that whatever they're partying to right now is about to be the future soundtrack of when they wash dishes and do other chores. And what's crazy is that when we hear what they listen to, like when I found the Pop Smoke, bro, I started washing dishes to the Pop Smoke, and that's just kind of how the organic cycle of music fandom goes. And the reason I bring that up is because it kind of correlates back to the idea of musical journeys, right? And most often when you talk to artists or you watch the interviews, you see everybody kind of starts it at the same place. Back when they're like an adolescent, 10, 11 years old, I discovered hip hop at this point, or I started writing my rhymes when I'm 12 in the high schools and shit. And you're like, hold up. The story starts way before there. Like, there's a good chance that when you popped out the hospital or whatever it was you were born, that there's some song or another being played in the room, that there's a little baby you absorbing that energy. And I know that because, like, when I'm like 5 years old growing up in Montreal and whatnot, I can remember being in Côte Saint Luc and my dad's got these gray boxes in the apartment. There was the amp and the preamp and the radio and the tape deck, and it had the wires going to the speakers all around the room with that bougie little surround sound that we had going on. And he'd play his Led Zeppelin tapes and things like that in the daytime, and at nighttime, though, it was the MC Mario club mix playing live from the clubs of Montreal. My mom's was more the discos and the musicals and the Disneys and that whole other vibe. All I have to say, all this stuff kind of like influenced me a lot. It's all this music and shit I was forced to listen to before I had any control over what I ever could have chose to listen to at that age, and it impacted me all the way to this day. So I was hoping, Mr. Q-052, that you could bring us back to the youngest Q-052 you can remember being, and tell us a little bit about what it sounded like to be you before you had any control over the sounds.
Absolutely, man. And I love that perspective, and I like that nostalgic reverse into the early days, right? And you're right. Too many people jump into, I'm into hip hop, and that's bullshit most of the time, right? Nobody's just into hip hop unless you're probably from New York, right? But
Nah, even then,
yeah,
all they moms and stuff was into like soul or this or that.
yeah, there's R&B going on. There's all this going on. For me, I'm growing up on the on the East Coast in the 80s, before cable, before any of this shit. I had 3 channels on the television, okay, right up until I was like 14 years old over there. We didn't have that fucking stuff, so we didn't have that direct connection. When I was on the reserve, connection to the city life and all of that wasn't happening, man. I grew up on Hank Williams Sr., okay, Conway Twitty, the old school country. My father was a day school survivor, so like the residential schools.
Right.
So in those schools, he had no choice. He had to learn to play instruments. So he played guitar, he played piano, he played all kinds of fucking stuff, right? And when I was growing up, him and his buddies would always be at our place playing cards, playing guitars, right? So country music, that's really, really where it comes from. And we didn't have a connection to hip hop within our community, not on the East Coast, not until we got much older and shit started coming out in the 90s, right? So we started having access stuff. We didn't have the internet either. So we didn't have devices in order to gain that type of knowledge. But there was a few people in our community, like myself and a few others, who were of mixed blood, you know what I mean? So I was going back and forth to the Boston area. So when I would leave the reserve and go over there, now I'd be immersed in a whole new culture, right? And when I was staying on that side, it was on Palm Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. Now, if you go to Palm Street in Nashua, you find it's the ghetto, right? So it's all the poor families living in these places. So Puerto Rican and Black community and indigenous people. There's like a lot of indigenous people over there. And so then we started listening to hip hop. This is where I started listening to hip hop. And, so my musical taste, and I have older brothers, right? And these guys grew up listening to CCR and Zeppelin and all of these bands, all the metal bands, right? And so I got a touch of all of that, man. I got a little bit of all of that. And even when I'm performing music now, I'm doing all of it.
Yeah, I noticed you have the band and you kind of hop around genres, and it's really interesting to hear that. So basically, if I understand it correctly, then your dad was forced to play instruments due to the way that the school system back then worked, which I had no idea that was even a thing. But that turned
Yep.
everybody into a musician and had everybody kind of jamming out back home. And then for some reason it's country, which I guess if you're not in the city makes sense. Fair enough. It's not my favorite genre, but I understand.
Man, you go on to the reserves on the East Coast, and it's mostly country. You actually go to the reserves in Innu communities in the North and whatnot. You know what the strongest genre of music is with Indigenous people is folk and country. This is the most popular music for Indigenous people. A lot more than hip hop or electric.
You know what?
Electronic.
When you say it next to folk music like that, and you realize that like folk and country are kind of cousins, folk is way doper to me. But okay, I get what you're saying.
It's got that country swag to it, right? It's got the same type of instruments. The thing with the folk, though, is you get a lot of the switchover, right? So you get a lot of the more drum beat from indigenous communities, In country, don't have that so much, right? It's just so there's a different vibe to it, but that folk adds that drum beat, and that's why you see so many indigenous people into that drum beat, to the folk music. But yeah, man, even right now, you go into Giskabigia, you go to my community, or you go to Listigoch, sister community, or any of the communities around Mi'kma'ki, country music is going to be driving.
Is it the old country or is it the new hip hop country?
It is the old country first and foremost, and then you have the Bayou music, right? Because our relationship on the East Coast is really close with the Acadian people. The Acadian people are the Cajuns that you call down south,
right?
Cajuns. So it's the same people. So the roots of their music are very tied into ours, and the interest in our communities are so tied into each other. That the Mi'kmaq, when they did the deportation of Acadian people to send them down south, and just get them out of here. A lot of Mi'kmaq men went with those Acadian women because they had already formed families together, right? So you can go down to Louisiana right now, and you can Lafayette, and you're gonna find Mi'kmaq people, indigenous families there, because they got deported with them. And right now, my wife is Acadian, right? And I have 5 children with her. If they were ever to send her anywhere, there's not a fucking chance in hell I ain't going. I'm going too. So that's why you see our spread out there. Back to the point is that Bayou music, that Cajun style music, you find that in the Mi'kmaq music as well.
Dude, that's super. So, I love the context you're giving. Because, you know,
and CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, like that type of vibe, and all of these guys that are coming. Brother Dedge, if you listen to Brother Dedge, it's a fucking great band, and you hear that vibe, you can find it into the roots so deep.
That's fair. I don't know that I've ever heard them, but I know that people love CCR, and I never really could. It was just never for me. Right. But the stuff that you're saying is super interesting. Like, I never really thought about the Acadians getting sent down south, because when is that ever going to come up when you're a typical white boy coming up through the Montreal school system, the English Montreal school system, which is already kind of weird inside of Quebec. So it's like, I never thought about that really, and then the migration patterns of people like that, but I guess that's a lot more prevalent in your world.
Yeah, and you know, the land always influences the music, right? It's the way it is. Our languages, if you look at the Mi'kmaq language or the Mohawk language, you know, all of the different nations, their language is directly related to the land. Now, when you start making music, you use your language. So it's music from the land, right? So it comes from there. So when you go from one place to the other place, you're finding music of that land. And for sure, when you get down into Bayou country, you're going to get Bayou music. And those Bayous are all around the East Coast, you know? So it's influence there too. And there's such a mix of culture, you know? The Acadians, first of all, to be Acadian, you're a mix of every goddamn race on the planet, right? You just mixed up everything, right? And then you got the Acadian people mixing with the Mi'kmaq people. And then there's a trade of culture. So there's so much trade of culture, even to the way the dressing and the sound of the music. It just gets really, really interesting, and it's rich and it's cool.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. That's partly why we're going through it like this. That's why it's Bridge the Gap, because a lot of us don't know a lot of things, or at least, and to think, like, you're geographically closer to me than so many people that's culture might be more similar to mine, but realistically, it's like an apples and oranges existence. Like in the 80s, I'm born in 87, right? So like, okay, I didn't grow up in the 80s like that, but still a little bit after. I'm in the middle of Montreal. We're complaining about getting music like a year late or movies 8 months late. You're like, I'm not connected. Like, dude, that's a completely different reality.
Yeah, there was no cable. In Giscabigiyat, we didn't have access to cable, I think, until 1992. 1992. Yeah,
and that's when 1992. You first get it.
That and it was in the non-native communities first, not in the reserve. You know, so it was different. You know, there's still the racial boundaries, right? And so, you know, I would go up with my brothers and we'd fucking hack that shit. You know, we'd pirate it. We'd climb the fucking posts, and I get fucking free cable on our road for a year one time. You know, it's just, we had to do it. It's the only way we had access. They would come right to the edge of the community and not connect it, right? So we're like, fuck. We want to see what everyone else is seeing. So, and that's what we did, you know. But that's how it was. We weren't connected to any of those things. And on the East Coast, things were moving a lot slower. It wasn't as progressive as the rest of the place, right?
I'm not 1,000% sure what you mean by that. Because, like,
as far as race goes, as far as having things available and accessible to the Indigenous communities, you got to understand that the Indigenous community, they call that a reservation, right? So that's federal reserved land for Indigenous people, for Indians, according to them. And that land the province has zero jurisdiction. They can't come in. They can't do anything. So that poses a problem for a lot of companies who are under provincial rule. So if you got a cable company who has an agreement with the province to provide a service, when it gets to the reserve, that's federal. So it doesn't apply. So they have no recourse if something goes wrong. So it was very touchy. It took a lot of
And
agreements between.
did other parts of Canada get access sooner, or is that what you meant by the east part of that statement before?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, other places, because they were, it's like on the East Coast, the racial issues were allowed for a lot longer because it wasn't seen as much. Less populated, people didn't see it so much, and things happen. And I'm not saying people from the East Coast are bad people.
No, of
We have
course not.
great people out there, but it's just that a lot of those things happened. There was a bar in the community right next to me in New Richmond. The bar was called Barraby's Hotel. And up on 2003, no Indians were allowed in.
That's a wild
Okay.
thought, man.
That's fucking wild. So just to talk about progressiveness and whatnot, just to say, and that was acceptable. That was acceptable to people there.
I mean, like I can remember how normalized a lot of the racism was. So like it's not that far back, but like to the level that you would describe it like that, like sometimes they're just not cognizant of it because it's like you said, it's never in your face. Like even in Montreal, like there's occasional places where you're gonna see drunk people, but like you're not really exposed to a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. You're exposed to different things,
There,
and
that's a good way
you
to
know,
put it. Different things, but not like I've never really been to any of the reservations. I mean, okay, I've gone to Ganawaga to get cigarettes or whatever, but like outside of that, like I don't know what it looks like. I couldn't tell you if Willie hadn't shot music videos here and there, like there's no visual to go with it. And
yeah.
so,
Well, it's very much the same as any other community, right? We have all of the ups and downs in any other community. We don't have access to the same services all the time. A lot of people think that Indigenous people are given a check and they're got a free way, and that's not how it works. There's, I served time in politics, right? So I've been through the system. I understand the system. My father was first elected chief when he was 21 years old, years and years and years before. So the political system is very well understood in the family. Um, but there's so much misinformation that is given to the non-Indigenous community in Canada, in North America, that people have so much room for assumption, and that opens the door for racism when that happens, and that's a problem because if like we understand Indigenous people in our communities, we understand the treaty rights, we understand our inherent rights, we understand our collective rights, our communal rights. The problem is the non-Indigenous community don't understand any of that. So when we do go hunting or we do go harvesting or we're on our territory, people think that we're doing something wrong because it's not the same rules. But that's not our responsibility to continually educate non-Indigenous people about Indigenous rights. When you have a government in place that has an education system, that has all of the tools necessary in order to provide that information to their own population, that would kill the racism on the spot for the most part. And but we continually find ourselves having to educate people individually, and that's a lot slower process. They run the school education system, they run the colleges and universities. They should be providing that information so we can eliminate systemic racism within our society.
yeah, that was super well said. I really like that answer. You definitely,
Thanks.
you said that like a politician. Well done.
Well, I spent a lot of time in there, and
But like not in a bad. I don't want to like. I don't want anyone to get that twisted. I meant it like a guy who gets politics more than like
yeah,
a negative politician.
yeah, yeah, because I ain't trying to sell you something right there. And
Nah,
I'll tell you something.
but your
Um,
wording was pristine.
Oh, thank you. But it's because I'm living that system. And if you listen to my music, you'll find that same conversation going on. I utilize music as a platform in order to address issues, to create systemic change. That is the goal. For me, that is the goal. It's not just about artistic expression, it's about education. And I have children. So it's very, very important for me that they understand what's going on, but it's very important that the people around them, their age, understand that as well. That's how we create change, right?
I agree with you.
So,
No, it's really well said. I agree with you. You caught me off guard with that, but like super pristinely like concise. Um, let's go back to like I guess you said you were young. When you were like super young, were you interested in music growing up with a dad who played guitar and stuff? Did you have any desire to pursue that, or were you up to other kinds of things when you were super young? Let's say under 10.
under 10, man, super interested in music, in art, in everything, in drawing. Growing up, I did a lot of harvesting with my dad, right? Because our economy was low. We didn't have a lot of work on the res. So all of us grew up making baskets or sweetgrass braids and stuff like this to sell, during the tourism season. So we were kind of brought up as artists inadvertently. We're doing it for work, right? We're doing it to feed our families, but you learn how to work with wood. You learn how to create. You learn how to do all of these things. So art was important. Drawing, I got into drawing a lot. My mom was a great artist. She could draw. She's wonderful. And so I was brought up really, really rich in the arts, whether it be from carving to any of those things. So growing up around music, same thing. So music was always a huge part of my life. I always wanted music to be my exhaust in order to express myself, right? My father, though, although he's the one that introduced me into most of these things, he had other plans for me. And if you know anything about Indigenous communities, the fathers have a big say in the son's future, And my father had a lot of kids, but he specifically thought that I was going to be working for our people, and he made sure he kept me on that road. And you're going to be he prepped me my entire life to be into Indigenous politics, right? And I preferred music and art, and he was like, no, fuck that shit. And I also played a lot of fun, right? Yeah. So my father was basically like, no, you're going to waste your fucking time with music. You're not going to do that. Secure your future. Get out there, work, establish something, own something, build your family, and that's what's important. Work for your community and do those things. So I did those things. I did what he did, but I always tampered with the music, and I always wrote, and I always did my artistic stuff on the side, and that's how it was. I didn't publish any music until 2018. I didn't publish any. I was working on things, and there's no coincidence. My father died in 2016. Okay. And so that opened the door.
Wow, that is like a serious, okay, because when you said if you know anything about, no, I don't know anything about that level of influence. Like my dad made me go into sciences, and then after a year, they made a deal with me, right? You can do sciences for 1 year, and if you do that and you don't like it, we'll fuck off on your life forever. And they adhered to that deal. I did my year of sciences, and then they, to the benefit or whatever, never had an opinion again about what I did. So it's the complete opposite for me. I don't have any idea what it's like. I'm sure my dad had plans for me that did not involve the way my life went, but nah, it was like nothing like that where somebody forced me down a path of like politics, which is, I certainly hope we can go through your political stuff, because I don't know anything about any of that. Like, you got to imagine that Willie scandals might be the most informative source of anything I have related to any of the Indigenous communities is like actual information.
Okay, cool. So yeah, my dad was into politics, into music. He was into everything, right? But he was also into business, and he opened himself. My Aunt Irene had a little canteen on the reserve where she sold French fries and had a little arcade section. Okay. And around 1990, she wanted to sell it. So she sold it to my dad. My dad bought that up, expanded onto that, turned it into a smaller restaurant in the community, expanded onto that. A few years down the road, by 1995, it was like a game room bar with a mini casino in it. Okay.
Wow.
With a few poker machines. And but during that time, he utilized that to generate revenues in order to buy a piece of land that was next to the reserve. Okay. And it's right alongside the river. And he purchased that, and he turned it into an outfitting for salmon fishing. All right. And it's called Micmac Camp. It's still working. All right. I'll get to those stages. But so as I'm growing up through the 90s now and here, I'm having to work in these places. So my dad is conditioning me into the work, whether I'm cleaning dishes, making poutines, serving beers, or guiding people on the river. So, I was constantly working, but at the same time, constantly working close within my community, doing things with people in the community, things with the elders, with the youth, and always doing these things. So I grew up conditioned by my dad the way he wanted me to be in those situations. And eventually in 2003, I would open my own gas station, you know,
Yeah,
and I
that's
would have
wild.
yeah.
So,
So
so instead of like school in a conventional sense, you're going through more of a mentorship experience upon which you're just kind of effectively working with the family business as a way to correlate it, and that kind of creates the
yeah,
experience necessary for you to launch your own thing. And I guess because of the family capital that you're investing in, the family is willing to now invest in you and help you go through kind of like, because you quite, because you know, what's wild is before this interview, and it's weird that this has just come up like this, is we were just discussing how kids used to be like a source of labor slash productivity slash whatever. So having lots of kids is like an asset, you know. And then I was pointing out how small my family is, because kids is not an asset when you're poor in Montreal without that whole thing. Kids be like mouths to feed and shit, and it's like it's almost like a bad financial investment. But in the way that your world described, it's like large families are like economic prosperity as much as cultural prosperity, and that's mad different.
yeah, huge difference, because in the city you can't go out and shoot a deer, you can't go out and shoot a moose, you can't go and fish salmon. We can, and the more fishermen you have, the more hunters you have, the more you're going to eat. You know, so there's these things are definitely different. But yeah, my father required that I leave school in order to invest into the business. You
Required
know,
that you leave school. That's a.
yeah, he needed me there,
So how old were
and
you
that's
when you left school?
16.
So up until
16.
16, you're in like the school system, and what's the?
Well,
Because you're
I
going back
left.
and forth between Boston, right? You said, or
Yeah, up until my teens, up until I was about 13 years old, and then I was primarily on the reserve all the time. And then
and how
when I
much
was,
time would you say you split between the two locations, or like
it,
how?
it depended on it depended on employment, right? From year to year, it depended on employment.
So you might do like a year of school in like the States, and then like a year of school on the reserve.
That's right.
How do these two
That's right.
school systems mesh? Like, what is that like? She's just going through it like that. Like, you're getting, it's almost like you're getting two completely separate education systems as you're growing up, depending on where you're at.
Totally, totally. It was a bitch of work, man. I'll tell you that much. You're constantly adapting, you're constantly adjusting to a new place. But you know what? After you've done it a couple times, it's no problem, right? So it develops character, it develops your ability to adapt, and I was grateful for it. I'm still grateful for it. And then I got scouted out to play hockey when I was 15 out
Mm.
of the East Coast. Okay. And by Roger Nielsen back in that time. And I ended up playing hockey just outside of Toronto, and then down into Halifax. And then when I was like 16, my dad was really needing help around the place. When I was gone, that was two hockey seasons. I was on my second season gone. And, you know, work need to be done. The family need to be fed. These things need to be done. So I went back and continued working onto it to develop Micmac Camp, the fishing camp. Actually, that's the logo right there.
Mm.
If you want to go look it up, we got a Facebook page and everything. And we developed that place, made it great. And in 2015, I took over that business as well. So that is now my business. It's under my name. And yeah, it's still running strong, dude.
And so, what does Micmac Camp do?
We provide, we're an outfitter. So we're providing fishing excursions on the Cascapedia River. So people come from all over the world, man, to come and fish.
So, you basically do like fancy fishing tours.
Absolutely. So it's all fly fishing. It's on the Cascapedia River. We got a lodge on a piece of property on the side of the river. We accommodate up to 16 people at a time. And that's that, man. My kids work there. My mom still manages the place because, hey, they're the ones who established it in 1997.
Willie just sent me the link so I can go share it with people. Shout out Willie
Oh,
Scandos for being here and helping out
shout
with
out to
that.
Willie. Hey, yeah, man. Willie's a great cat, man.
Yo, facts. He was like, you have to interview Q. You have to do it as soon as you can. And shout out Digital Fire for being here and Layla Max in here. And I appreciate everybody that's watching, because y'all always make it a more special experience when y'all are here. And Ismail. How could I forget Ismail and Linda? They're also here. But yeah, so you're really running this entrepreneurial thing. And I guess you're kind of catering to whatever tourists are coming through the area. And
I do a lot of different things, right? So I wear I can't, like, if you were to ask me for a description of what I do for a living, I can't fucking give you one. I do too many different things. You know, I also do traditional cooking, and I do all kinds of stuff. I do fishing shows. I do cooking shows. I do like a lot of different
Like
things
TV
that
shows?
yeah, yeah, television shows and you know, web movies and shit.
Okay, okay, let's
So
run it
yeah,
back. Let's run it. Okay, so you're like young and you open up your first thing at like what? That's what I think the beginning of your thing is.
yeah, I was 22.
All right, so you start at that point and you open up your own store. I can't recall what kind of store it is.
It was a
A
gas
gas
station,
station.
convenience store, and the whole bit. Yeah.
All right, so tell us a bit about what it's like to be a 22-year-old entrepreneur with your first store.
Uh, it was it was par for the course, man. Remember, I grew up in this shit, so it wasn't scary. It wasn't something new to me. It wasn't something I wasn't ready for.
Mm.
I grew up in business, you know. I grew up doing those things, so it really, it was just another day in my life ready to go. It was exciting because it was mine, and I wasn't, you know, it didn't belong to my folks or you know, a family member or something. So that was exciting about it. There's a lot of work put in it, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and you know, that's the way it goes.
So how long did you run the store for?
I'm still running it now.
So just that's just the beginning of multiple endeavors and you still have the store. So like you go there, that's why.
Yeah,
And
I got a staff there right now, and then in total I've got about 27 employees.
wow.
Yeah,
This guy's
yeah,
actually boss. Like people be talking boss. This is what boss
yeah.
is.
Yeah. But that's why you don't hear me talking about that shit, right? I don't like to talk fiction. I'm going to talk about the truth. I don't use my platform in order to go and brag about endeavors, right? What I want to do is use it to make change.
Mm, I
You
appreciate
know,
that. I guess
I
if
could I could make a whole fucking album about bragging, but you already heard that from how many fucking people? I
mm,
don't want to do that.
yo, I
I
got
see the
the
problems in
only
my
thing I
community.
can tell you is that when I hear somebody maybe bragging in the sense that you're saying, I understand, but let's say you did come through and flex on having 27 employees and you paid them on time.
Yeah,
Now that's a different kind of flex because now you're
yeah.
giving solid advice to people, and there is a
Look,
way to brag while giving
yeah,
advice.
yeah. I suppose. Just, you know, you got to take care of your employee. That's, look. There ain't nobody that takes care of those employees like I do back home. That's for sure. I was way past minimum wage. I'm paying my cashiers at store $18 an hour. Okay,
Okay,
and they're taken care of. They get bonuses every Christmas. They're taken care of all of the time. I take care of my people. There's no way around that. My music reflects that, and my life reflects that, and it's important. Like I said, I got kids, and they need to see that, right?
no, I appreciate that, and that's why I'm saying sometimes it's okay to not necessarily brag for the sake of showing off, but brag for the sake of setting standards for other people to aspire
Yeah,
to be.
yeah, for sure. And that I have no problems doing, but to get up and be bragging about, you know, the ride or whatever. There's some things that have been done too many times, and what's not done enough is speaking the truth, putting truth on the track.
Nah, that's fair. And your music is pretty unapologetically for your people about issues that it's almost like you want me to hear it, but you don't care as much if I fucks with it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It don't matter. I'm not going to beg you to come and listen to it, but I hope you do listen and you understand, right?
I
So
felt it. Willie says you still drive your first truck.
I do. I still got my first car. I got my first car that I bought. Okay, when I was 19 or 20, I went down to go when my great grandfather in New Hampshire got sick. Um, he's the one that would take care of me when I go down to the Boston area. He always take care of me. And so when he got sick, he was on dialysis. There was nobody around close to go and take care of him. So I dropped my fucking life and I went and I go take care of him, you know? And I took care of him until he passed. And while I was down there, I had to work and take care of him at the same time. So I was working out of I was doing night shifts at Toys R Us. I was stocking shelves, dude. So I was working there, and I was working as a landscaper. I was working on the grounds, right? So I was doing what I had to do, bring money home, take care of my grandfather, and do all of that. So I needed a place to get from A to B, and in the States, it's really easy to go and get financing for cars and whatnot. It's a lot easier than over here. So I went and I got myself a car. That was in 1999. Yeah, so I still got that little red ZX2 Ford Escort. Still drive it today.
That's wild. Still.
Yeah, wow, yeah. And my great grandfather co-signed for me to get that. Man, I didn't have a fucking pot to piss in, right? I needed help, and so that's my last connection to my great grandfather.
Okay, that's like super sweet and sentimental.
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
really cool.
Yeah.
So after, so I guess after you open up the store, what is like the next branch off in your endeavors that you added to that?
Family. Family. I have 5 boys.
So, procreation and the whole getting married and all of that.
Absolutely.
I guess that's an adjustment still.
There's that, and also there was the reappropriation of culture. Now I have children, and there's a lot of traditions and cultures that we've lost over the years, right? So there's a lot of things that I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to teach my children because I didn't learn. I had a lot of stories from my father, my uncles, elders in the community about things that were being done in the old days, but that were never practiced anymore because they weren't allowed to, right? So I was afraid that those would just go into stories, seep away, and become forgotten, like a lot of our traditions. So I said, I got a responsibility. I got kids, and I got to make sure I fucking bring this shit back. So I'll give you one example. When I would go and pick go cut ash trees to make baskets. One time I was a kid. I don't know. I was probably about 10 years old, somewhere around there. And we were cutting ash in the woods on the side of the river. Now, when we would go and cut ash, we'd get the trees, we'd work in the morning, but the old folks always had tea time. Take a break, you have tea. Go on the side of the river, have a little tea, you make a little fire before you go out and you keep cutting more ash. And that's how you make sure that you're able to work all day long, right? That tea will give you energy. And we were sitting on a log on the side of the river, and my father and his best friend, Richard, were talking about the old days, how their grandparents told them they used to cook in these logs. They used to put salmon right in there. They would heat rocks. They'd hollow the log, put the rocks in there, the hot rocks, then put salmon on boards and steam it in there. I've never seen that happen. I've never witnessed it, but it always stuck in here. So then I started practicing doing it myself. I was pretty good with a chainsaw. I'm a carver. So I cut myself a log and I started putting it to use. Now I've been doing that for years now. My kids all know how to cook salmon in a log. My father never taught me, but he gave me the story. So this is just an example. So all these little stories that I would gather up from elders in the community, I would go fishing just so I could go and bring salmon or trout to elders in my community. I'd go to their house, bring it to them, just because that's how I would get them to talk to me. And then they start sharing old stories with me. Then I'd keep them in. And I'm like, oh shit, I got to do that. That's how I learned how to build birch bark canoes.
You know what's wild? Because what you just dropped there is a huge knowledge nugget. Because if you read any of those entrepreneurial, how to get like successful, whatnot, they always tell you find somebody that has something that you want, and then bribe them with food. I fucking swear, you're supposed to go. Really? You're supposed to go up to like let's say I wanted Willie's help to plan a show. If I'm being strategic about it, I'm going to go, yo, Willie, let me take you for a coffee. Willie, let me get you a this. And if you think about it, all of our it's always a food item. And really what you did is you went and brought these people food to get what you needed. And I'm like, that's wild how universal sometimes the food game can be.
Yeah, it's incredible. But in our community, honest to God, you can't, first of all, you ain't going to an elder's house empty-handed. You better be bringing them something. And if you want to have conversation, you can go to an elders community empty-handed and ask them a few questions, and you're going to get the driest fucking answers you're ever going to get. Dry. Just like, you're wasting their fucking time. Get out of here. I'm going to go play bingo, right? But if you show up with some food and you bring the ingredients and you want to cook in their house, like, hey, I'm going to show you how I'm cooking this. I'm going to show you how this is done. I learned this. Now you're starting to do something together. Now you got some conversation going on. Then they ask you, where did you get that fish? Oh, I got it down around the bank over there. Holy shit. That's where I used to fish with my kids. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's where my grandfather showed me how to fish. And it used to be like this. And it used to be, that's how the conversation starts. You got to get in there and do that. You go to an elder's house and you just expect answers, get the fuck out of here. Don't work like that. not in our communities.
Bro, that's how it works in all communities. You just gave away the secret to all communities, but most of us just don't even know how to do that shit because there's not a lot of culture and custom like that shit. But like, facts is, you just gave the blueprint to like
But there you go.
how to politic successfully with richer people.
Yeah, and most of the time, man, it's not just to get information. What's important is to spend that time. That time is golden. You're going to remember their mannerisms. You're going to understand their wisdom through their thoughts and through their explanation. Don't go there with a notepad, because if you go there with a notepad, you ain't listening. Sit there, listen to them, and understand. I'm telling you, that's the way to do it. And then you're able to grab some knowledge that you can perpetuate to the next generation. And that's what's important. We're supposed to evolve one generation to the next, one to the next. I believe that my father was better than his father's generations. I believe that I'm better than my father's generation. I believe my children will be better than mine. That's the way it's supposed to be. We got to give them the tools.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. Like, in all tiers of society, I believe that, like, one of the things that we've lost is the idea of mentorship and apprenticeship in general. Like, there might be, like, programs for it, but I don't see it as being, like you're supposed to go find younger people to go, nurture them. Like, it's not really something I feel like people my age be, like, enforced upon unless they're your direct offspring. But, like, at a cultural community level, I'm noticing there's a lot of weird issues because we're not doing that. So, like, the way you're describing it, it's almost like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Invest in the youth. That's what everybody says they want to do, but you out here actually doing it.
Yeah, I know when someone's full of shit. I've heard the jargon, I've heard the political promises and whatnot, but I see the people who actually put their feet on the ground and get the job done. It's different. It's just like protesting, man. You find my feet all over the goddamn place. I'm protesting everywhere. Always have. I did my first one with my dad when I was 9 years old, and I won't stop. There's a difference between sharing something on Facebook and actually showing up for the fucking cause, where people need numbers to make change. Where you need to demonstrate that there's population standing together. And these are things that need to be done.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily 1,000% sure how protesting is in my soul because it's not necessarily something I inherently grew up with. Like, I actually went to one of the Black Lives Matters protests because I was like, okay, I understand this makes sense. But in general, there's a lot of, like, I don't know how much protesting does anything is more my problem with it. So, like, as an example, there's a lot of vapid protests. And it's not to say that certain protests don't matter. And I'm not trying to diminish it. But, like, you take a look at, like, 500,000 people show up for Greta Thunberg and nothing changes. And then you see a lot of people show up to defund the police and nothing changes. And then you see all these protests happen and then nothing changes. And that's when I have trouble. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the right solution is. But you watch the trucker shit and you're like, what was that about? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, one thing is certain. People have the right to protest and they have the right to go out and exercise that right.
Right.
I don't believe that we can judge one protest being better than the other. We don't have that right to do that because people have that. We have to respect people's decision and people's points of views. And that's okay. And we're lucky to live in a place where we're allowed to protest. You look at Russia, they can't fucking do that.
Facts.
Where we have an impact, I know as Indigenous people, when it comes to railway blocks, like you see in Ganawage, road blocks in Giskabigia and all over the goddamn place. We know we have an impact when we do this with longevity because we hit them where it hurts. Government and industry only care about one thing. It's this. So if you can stop their flow of merchandise, you're hurting their pockets. And that's the only thing they fucking care about. Politicians, they need industry people to pay for their campaign trails to get to be the politicians. So those merchants need to be able to move. So if we can go in there, if we're making them lose money, they're looking for ways to solve the problem. And a lot of times that forces them to the table in order to do things. Do we have complete systemic change? No. But do we solve little battles at a time? That's the only way we can do it. We can't win the war in one shot. We're not enough people. But we can take steps in order to chip away.
So in a sense, it's the collective it's the collective number of multiple smaller protests with high impact that force them to come to the table more so than the grandiose one-off protests and whatnot.
100%. It's always a snowball effect.
Right.
Always. So we need small things happening everywhere, because when you interfere with their economy, I'm telling you, it's the only language they speak. It's the only language they speak. I've been at the political level. I've represented, believe it or not, there's a thing called the AFNQL over here in Quebec. That's the table of all the chiefs that sit in this province, okay, from all the different nations. The 11 nations, there's one table of chiefs. And there's several times I've been called upon by that table to go and represent them at a provincial level, even at the national level. So I'm very familiar with dealing with these politicians on different grades. I fish with politicians. I know the system and I know what their interest is. It's never what's best for you. It's never what's best for the community. It's always about the bottom line. It's always about business. It's always industry. How much more can we make? And that's all that counts. And politicians only give a fuck about who's paying for the campaign trail. Why the fuck do you think that Legault right now is pumping out these little paychecks here and there? It's election season, dude. There's little monies going out here and there. There's things that he's doing.
Little $500 credits and shit.
The contracts that he's given out to Bombardier. Guess who pays for his fucking campaign trail?
I just gotta say, I've not had a single person walk in here and really bring up anything meaningful in Quebec politics before. So kudos. You're bridge the gap number 150. Not cool, when I say Quebec, I mean meaningful Quebec politics. My biggest criticism of Quebec media on a political front is that they only ever talk about immigration and a couple of other issues, and they never really, or the language issues will come up, but nobody ever talks about the economy in like a meaningful way. Or if I'm not mistaken, they passed a law in Legault's first term that lets them take any land they want if it's deemed necessary for bigger government projects. And like shit like that happens.
They can expropriate land. Yeah.
And nobody ever talks about that shit, but they'll talk about masks and whatnot.
Yeah, because it's diversions, right? And they prefer that you be worried about the little things going on. But while he's busy passing these bylaws or these omnibus laws, these bills.
Yo, can you just break down omnibus? I know you use that shit in your raps, and I was like, say a word. I forgot what that term means. So like,
okay, so omnibus is basically, all right, we're gonna talk about this. This is we're gonna pass a bill of law today, and they're gonna name it Bill Q-052, okay? In that law, the meat on that is going to be, let's say, transportation. So we're here on transportation. But what they're going to do is not just pass one law on there, right? Because politically, you're not doing anything fucking stealthy. So then they start passing little bylaws from here. So it's going to be transportation. What do you mean transportation? Let's talk about bicycles. All right, bicycles. What are we going to do with bicycles? Well, now they can only have this lane to drive through. Oh, okay. Now the law is going to change here on that bicycle thing. All right. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Well, now if you don't use this lane and you do something else, you get fined for this much. Okay. And what happens with those fines? Well, if you don't pay those fines, this is what's going to happen. So all of these other laws start fitting in to this one law. That's an omnibus bill. They're stacking shit in there, and all you see is the headline. You think that it's just one thing, but in reality, there's a whole bunch of shit that might violate your rights. And then it doesn't have enough time to go through public opinion for people to really understand what's happening. And this is now
like high key. Okay, one time I tried to read one of these motherfuckers. It was back in the Pauline Marois days, and it was the one where like she would have dropped in like language police in the next level. She could have appropriated government resources to spy on companies. Like, this is not a lie. If you really break down what she wrote into that, they would have been able to take like SQ agents and have them go undercover as employees in a training just to bust you out for not speaking French and shit. Like, that is not an exaggeration of what was written. This shit was like 35 pages of bylaw shit that covered like everything, and you could barely understand a fucking thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you know that I love this where this conversation is going, because it opens the door to talk about a lot of shit. As an Indigenous politician, when you get elected into your council, you are so fucking swarmed with these papers that it's hard to achieve anything. I've seen it over and over and over again. People with great intentions who run in Indigenous communities to be counselor or chief or grand chief or whatever system they follow. And they have good intentions. And they have this dream that they're going to make this change and they're going to do these things for these people. But suddenly you enter this machine that was designed for your failure. This system was not designed in order for your community to fucking prosper and grow. It was designed to keep you fucking down. It was designed to do this. And what they're going to do is you say, okay, I'm going to make change. I need more housing. You need more housing. Okay. Here's some documents. Can you please fill these in? Fill all of this stuff in, read it, understand it. Then you're going to understand Section 35 housing, and you're going to understand social housing under Section 35, and social housing under fucking Section 92, and all of these things. They're going to have all of these things. And now all of a sudden, you who want to create change have become a government administrator. You're administrating programs for the government now. They've tricked you into doing their fucking job. Here, you go fill this out. Son of a bitch. You've taken enough from us. That's your fucking job. It's my job to come to your door, knock on them, and make sure that we have those services provided to us that are deserving to our communities. So you get so caught up in the bureaucracy of things, and you get so caught up in being an administrator that you can no longer provide the hopes and dreams and intentions that you had to your community. Then what happens is your community members turn on you. Call you a fucking sellout and call you somebody who's not taking care of them, you know? So, but that's, the system is designed to do that. And it's very, very hard to get out of it. That's why I was in politics and I left politics. I never lost an election. Actually, the 2 terms I went with the strongest mandate anybody in our community. And then I was nominated every year since I left. I'm nominated as fucking Grand Chief again, and I refuse it. Because I feel like I can do more from where I'm right now. I can talk to more people. I can educate
what's
more.
So it's really wild is you just broke down the problem with local politics in Montreal.
There you go. Because politics is politics. Just change the name.
And it's wild how convoluted the systems are and how, if you want to do this and you want to create the change, you have to go down these loops, and then it's like you have to learn legalese, and then the next thing you know, you're caught up in politicking in order to get like a fraction of begging for it because you've done all this work. So at least you got to get something.
And then when you do all this work, you know that we live in a democracy, right? That is a nice thing. That's what Indigenous people have always lived in. But so democracy requires that you at least have people to agree with you. So now what happens when you're playing the political game, you come up with a plan, you've worked onto it hard, you know it's good for the people, you know you got to put it through, but now you need an alliance. You need people to support what you're going to pass. You need quorum. You need 5 out of the 9 people that are going to vote on this. So there's other politicians there with things that they want to pass. I'll support you if you support me. You support this, support that. Then people find themselves supporting shit that they don't really believe in, but they need the support from the other politician. Understand? So now you're stuck into the fucking machine. You're stuck in the fucking gears of the machine. So if you want to break the machine, you can't be in it. You got to be out of it.
Joe, it's wild that you break it down like that. It's so simple, and it's the problem with all politics and shit. Is there like lobbying and things like that you have to deal with?
100%. There's lobbying going on. When election season is coming, I call it a season, baby, because it's a fucking season. When election time's coming in, you got to start getting your ducks in line. You got to start having your platform ready. You got to say the right words. They got to be shiny words. They got to be to the right people. They got to be to the leads of the family. They got to be to the right groups. They got to be on the right fucking platforms at the right fucking time. Politics is all about timing and wording. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of studying in order to get it right. But you're still wasting all of that fucking time on the politics of things and not on the issues. Understand?
Man, I do. I really, really do. Because it's not that different than business. Honestly. I got to middle management, and while I can't go very deep into this conversation as I'm actively employed, let's just say that I've had to learn a lot about politicking and compromise and agreeing. And it's not to say that it's always a bad thing, but my goals are rarely the goals of the people I have to politic with. And we both have to meet our objectives to the same guy up top. And he ain't listening to any of our excuses. So,
Yeah.
end of the day, we both have to win. And that's where you end up compromising. And it's even run it back to the hip hop scene. You might have to work with people you flat out don't like. And you might have to compromise your vision a lot, because not like your artistic vision. I'm talking the more business scene side of shit. Like, I remember swearing this, that, the next thing, and then I got to where I'm at, and I'm like, oh, that's why motherfuckers be charging rappers. Oh, okay, I get some shit now.
Yeah, there's definitely it, man. There's no matter what we do in life, we're gonna deal with politics. And Jesus Christ, you know what? We're taught to start dealing with politics in school, dude. In school, you got your class president, you got your fucking student body, you've got all of these things going on. All of this shit is happening. We grow up in a system that fucking conditions us to be politicians in the world after school, you know? So that's how it is, man. Politics is a big thing.
I never thought about that like that.
And politics is such an old fucking thing, man. It's so old. Indigenous people, we have our families in clans. We have clans, and there's a lot of politicking going on all the time, whether it be hunting, whatever it be. All right. So it goes way back to the caveman, dude. I even question if music was started off for politics. If you go into those old caves in France and whatnot, and you see there's drawings, and what came first? Was it the drawings? Was the music? You know? And what came first when you were forming tribes? Was it music? Was it talk? Like, what was it? You know, there's a lot of...
I had somebody... So I was talking to somebody who was describing the African drum patterns and how music is language, depending on your culture. As in, like, no... And he was... I had a lot of trouble with this because sometimes I hear new concepts and it takes a minute and I still don't fully get it. But the way he broke it down is that it's not that music evokes feeling. It's not. It's like music is a language. When they play these drums in this order, it communicates to the people listening to it the same way that these words I'm using. And I'm like, that's like some shit. Like, right? Like, it fucks you up to think about. But then if we run it back to what you're saying, it's entirely possible. Because I saw that one movie, like Quest for Fire or whatever, where they don't even talk the whole movie. They just grunt or whatever. And
yeah.
But if you think about it, like, before sophisticated language, what are you gonna do to talk? Like, it's probably like cats and shit. The cats be singing to get my attention. They know what's up.
That's why I question what came first. Was it music or was it language? Because we're more inclined where it's easier to make sound. When babies are born, they're not speaking language, but they're making sound. So those sounds are relatable, and then you learn sounds, and then of course you develop languages, right? So how primitive is fucking music? It's that fucking primitive, dude. We're born singing. We're born crying. Crying is singing, you know?
That's a good way to put it, though. You're right.
Yeah.
So, like, how is the political system, I guess? Like, how is it, like, so you get elected, and when do you get elected?
Well, it depends, right? So some communities is 2-year term, some it's 3-year term, some are 4 years. And that really depends on the community and the system that's in play. There's nominations. There's usually nominations about 2.5 months before the election date. And the nominations come in, and then you have a period of a couple of weeks in order to accept your nomination or to decline your nomination. And then after that, your name's in the hook. Politicking time, baby. So now it's time to start gathering your votes.
When did you get elected?
First time I was elected was in 2009, August 20th, I believe.
So you were the chief during the Harper times.
Yes, I had brought a delegation. I brought 2 bus loads of people from Giskabigia and Listigudge to Parliament Hill. 2 bus loads of people to protest during I Don't Know More, the whole bit, man. I was constantly blocking shit. I was a pain in the ass. That's what I do. It's my job.
That's a cool thought. So, like, as a politician, in a sense, one of your bigger mandates is to obstruct Canada when necessary.
Yeah. See, I was in a different position than other council members, colleagues of mine that were there, in the sense that I didn't need any financial. I refuse to be paid. I refuse to be paid. I served 2 years, and I refused to get paid for anything I did. I said, nope, that's not. I was elected here to bring help. I have an income. I have a business. I don't need it. So I'm not going to be paid for this. That provides money for other people in the community, right? And so what I would do is I wouldn't take a salary, but there was a mandatory, just for their books, their accounting, an honorarium per month. And at that time, I think it was $750. And so that $750, I would sign over every time to the lunch program in my community for the kids at school. I never took a penny. As long as they're not paying you, they can't own you. You know?
Facts.
You know? So they can't tell me I was out of line. They can't tell me I can't do that shit. Fuck you. You ain't paying me. Do what I want.
And so as long as you get elected then and you have no financial ties to the system, you have the skills and acclimate because you can make your own money. And evidently you got like a machine, so you don't even have to put the real time as much to be as present. Not to say time in, but as present at each like location, so to speak.
Well, it's different, right? I actually have the liberty. My being an entrepreneur gives me more time to put where I want to put it, right? So if I need to put it in a certain place at a certain time, that's what I'll do. Then I'll move it back over here. Of course, when you're starting a business, it doesn't work like that, right? Your full fucking time is in there. It's in there. But once you get your stuff established and things are working well, that liberates time. Wealth is not money. It's liberty, right? Having that ability to liberate and give time to the things that are important. And that's what I've always done. And that's what I do.
So you basically create businesses. You're like the YouTube guy that talks about the recurring revenue and figures out the streams, except you're doing it like the honest, like actually doing it way.
I do it on the feet, man. I do it on the ground. And I don't know what guy you're referring to.
No, I just mean like, because you hear these ads on YouTube and they're like, man, you can get all these recurring revenues and free up all your time and do this, that, the next thing. And you're like, nah, you actually achieved the life that these guys sell, but via like actually doing it through the hard work route of creating successful businesses that you specialize in. Because if I'm not mistaken, you went as far as custom cooking and like you dug up secrets and invented shit that was necessary to like add finesse. That can't be a cheap experience, you know?
Well, yeah, but it can be.
I meant like, so from a price point, you can charge a lot more for something that's really dope than for something that's more common. That's what I was trying to convey.
Crazy? Yeah, but for those things, when I do that, when I'm cooking salmon and I'm doing, because I do this in a lot of events, like I've served salmon. I've served 150 pounds of salmon at Parliament Hill in Quebec, at Parliament, right in front of Parliament, not Parliament Hill, at the Gouet Festival in Quebec City, okay, where I'm cooking out of logs and doing this and I'm serving people. And I had the organization only pay for the costs. I'll go and do it because it's educating people, it's sharing, it's cultural showing.
That's like,
you know? So I don't need to get paid for that. When I go into schools, when schools call me in to go and do workshops, I do hip hop workshops. I do workshops on history. When I go into Bishop's University or universities in Montreal to give history lessons or anything, when I'm going to do these things, they always offer me money, and I always take the money and put it back in their school program because that's where it's needed. You know, I know where I am financially. I'm not money motivated. For me, I'm motivated by the change, by the outcome. You know, I need measurable results. I need to see that there was a difference, and that's my payment. So when I talking to students and explaining something and I see they get it, they understand it, that's measurable for me. That means we started here and now you know something, right? And I know that you're going to be able to pass that on. I can measure that. The money, you ain't going to measure that. You're going to be dead one day and it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah, I just got to like parrot what Layla Mack just said. Q is the definition of a stand-up man. Pure awesomeness in class. I'm like, damn, man. Like, every answer, you're just like... But the thing is like, again, it's like you're like a manifestation of a lot of these principles that, like, these books be preaching. Where it is, like, the altruistic tendency to give back is really what creates the law of attraction that propels you forward. I mean, I usually spin it with a more capitalistic sense because it's just how my brain processes the world. But, like, ultimately, even good business is based on providing fundamental needs and like, you know, actually being useful, and isn't just about like vapid upscaling and shit like that. So it's like I hear everything you're saying and it just makes sense about how to create a collective system that lets everybody prosper. And I'm really into information sharing. Like to me, that's the biggest thing that I find weird is how like people kind of hoard knowledge sometimes when we should be like funneling that down. But like you find these academics, and I know it's not everybody, but there's a lot of people I've met that got like doctorates and things, and they be like wildly, yo, these people didn't put in the 10 years to learn what I learned, so F them, I'm a jargon this so deep that ain't nobody ever gonna learn it.
You're so fucking right when you say that. And it's frustrating, man, because knowledge, we don't own that shit. And it doesn't belong to us. It's passed down. It's borrowed, right? So something like that is borrowed. You got to keep passing it down. We don't own it. We borrow it. And you got to make sure. When you're dead, if you own that shit, if you own it in here, when you're dead, so is anything that you fucking thought. Anything that you knew, it's dead if you didn't share it. So
Yo, that's a wild way to put it. Like, he just took it and was like, look, if you're really selfish about your shit, bro, be a little more egotistical and put that into the universe because you don't want it to be like Ghost.
That's right.
That's nifty. I love the way your mind works, dude. This is super interesting stuff.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I fucking love the conversation, man.
So, like, okay, so you get in 2009, and your job is effectively to go represent your people in the most meaningful way to create systemic change, which we've established is long-term annoying protests.
Well, not just that. So when I was there, I worked on a lot of different things. So I worked on cultural activities, rejuvenation of culture. So if you come to Giskabigia, if you look up Giskabigia, my community online, you'll find our powwow grounds. It's beautiful. It's alongside the bay and whatnot. It used to be in the like on a basketball court in the center of the community, and it wasn't very inviting. So I put in a lot of work in there's a lot of process into it, and established a new powwow ground that represents our nation. It's indigenous driven. There's a fish market there, like a poissonnerie down there. There's the co-op to sell crafts. Everything is right there. It's beautiful. So things like this, economic development is very, very important, because by providing these things, by creating businesses that are owned by the community, well, you're employing people in your community, and now people are now working, and that's money in the community, and they're providing things to their kids. So economic development is crucial. Housing, crucial. Youth activity, sport, all of these things, services, crucial. So I worked on all of these things, right to energy level. So I worked on the first.
Did you just say, hold on, right to energy level? This is like because y'all don't have the same level of power that like I can just indiscriminately waste all the power I want, and there's just a little fee next to that.
No, in sense of, okay, back in 2009, 2010, and 11, this is when wind power was starting to get really big and really starting to be an economic boom, and green energy for the province. And Pauline Marois at that time was really investing in there. So in the Gaspésie, we've seen these wind parks going up all over the place, these wind farms. I was like, I want a piece of this fucking pie. That's our territory. We need this. So worked with the community of Gaspé, my community Giskabigia, and Listigouge. We all worked together, and we put forward, and we worked hard as a team, as a unit, as a nation, and we established our own wind park. So it was a $400 million project where we didn't have a fucking pot to piss in. So we had to go out and find business partners from Energex and all of these different big companies, convince them that it was a good investment and that it was going to be beneficial to my community and to your business, and that it was good for politics. And I was working with Pauline on this one pretty hard. She's actually not a bad person. I'll give her that. And
you might be the first person I've ever heard be like,
she's not a bad person. Politics, you can't take personally. That's business. And but we established 150 megawatt wind project that's in Gaspégawagi now. It's called Niskikujuzen. In our language, it means big wind. And that's generating money now for years. And it's coming back to our community to provide services. That's own source revenues. And you know what's so strong about that? Own source revenues? That means we don't fucking need the government. We don't need permission to put money into programs. This is money that we generate ourselves. We see a problem in our community that needs assistance.
And
We
you
take our
and
fucking
you
money.
establish that private outside the government.
Yeah, that is a business corporation. We have our own business corporation for that. And that belongs to the communities. And that generates money for the communities. That generates autonomy for our communities. That gives us peace of mind that we can provide services to our people without the government ever fucking trying to intervene or give us a hard time. And that's where we need to be on every level.
Right. That's a wild thought that y'all. And how long did it take for you to create or to organize $400 million, whatever, of funding?
4 years. It was the last project I worked on. I promised that I wouldn't leave until it was done. And we signed the contract in April of 2013. And I finished my mandate in August 2013. So
you were just like done with politics after that. You had your giant legacy though, because that's one hell of a legacy.
yeah, there's that, and there's a few other. Yeah, I was active. I think the things that I'm most proud of though were activities that we're doing with the youth in the community. We had invested into community canoes, right? So youth in the community could just come and grab canoes and go canoeing when they wanted. They had tents, they had camping trips available. They had all of these things to keep them busy. Fucking idle hands are the devil's playground, man. If you don't stay busy, you're gonna get in trouble. So this is what we have.
It's
Yeah,
like
so
you gotta have youth centers and programs and opportunities for
gotta
people
be active in it. I see too many communities having the fucking places, but not active in them. You can't just have a building and expect that to babysit your kids. You need active people who are going to work with the youth, who care about the youth, and are going to take them and give them some life lessons and some cultural knowledge. It's important.
That is important. I mean, I don't know a lot about how to manage a youth center. I do know it's complicated, but it does require investment and good people that want to be there. Otherwise, it could lead to some bad shit.
Absolutely. And that's why you got to have a close eye on it. You got to have a good team and you got to form it.
So how do you, okay, that's an interesting point. So you're running up on a government system. How do you avoid, let's say, the corruption side of things? How do you keep your eye on it? So I guess on your front, cool, you're not bought, but then you still have this team of people and you have to work with them.
Hold them accountable. That's all. Be truthful. Don't be afraid to say the truth when you're in front of people. One thing people fucking knew in the team that I was with is when it came time to speak to the community, because we had a lot of community meetings. I was very, very adamant about making sure we had community meetings all the time, because I don't want anybody wondering. That's the worst fucking place to be. You need to be able, people need to know what's going on. And if you've got a problem showing your community what you're doing, there's an issue. So I would never do that. And I would tell people, you know what? If you don't come to the community meeting, if you're not sitting up there with me to answer questions and explain what the fuck we're doing, you can rest assured you won't be sitting in that seat very fucking long, you know? And so that's how you get them there. You hold them accountable. And when people want to talk that shady shit, you just say, look, fuck, we'll talk about it in front of everybody. That's all.
And the only way to do this then is to not be bought, because then you have the ability to do it.
The only way, and not just that. I believe we have a lot of people who are not just run off of money. We just need more of them to.
No, but why I say it like that is because I learned a lot about the difference between private and publicly traded companies recently. A private company is accountable to whoever owns the company. So let's say you got a dope ass owner person. Y'all can basically have a carte blanche as long as shit makes money. The second you're publicly traded, you're accountable to stockholders of whatever country you're publicly traded in. And I like my day job's in France. So imagine it's France norms, you know, like, and the thing is when you guys make decisions, the politics you represent, like all the different things, it isn't like you said about what's right or wrong. It boils down to, are the shareholders going to benefit off of the decision that you're making? And that's every decision that you make the second you go public, because the board has to approve shit and the board only cares about that. So private is fascinating to me because in a sense it's ownership in the way that you're describing, and it lets you make decisions, which is why, like, even for my shit, it's going to take me forever to get to where I want, but nobody's paid for it but me. So I can sit here and smoke my weed, talk my shit, and be as whatever I want to be to my benefit or dismay. The only people that will finance me is the people watching and myself. And if they want to donate, cool. But I'm not like, that's not the business model. I have other business models I can do to figure out shit, you know, like that's,
Right.
and I think that allows me to explore truth like this without consequence. Because you could say pretty much whatever you need to say, and I'm like, let's talk. Because this is nifty.
Yeah.
Who else is going to tell me about this shit?
Yeah. And that's really cool. And you know what? That's really what it is, right? So a public trading company is, in a sense, much like running a community, right? So you are accountable to the people, and you have questions to, if you want to pass things, people got to know. Things got to be found out. But that's not always the case. Depends on the community you go to. And I've seen, I've witnessed, I've experienced having a terrible council and having a council that has bad intentions. You know, I've experienced it. I've seen it in my own community, and it's hard to deal with. It's very, very frustrating, and so that's why it's so important for people. And I'll say this over and over. I know a lot of people hate to hear it when I say this, but one of the best ways to have your fucking voice heard is to hit the fucking poll and vote. There's too many times people are not getting out there. They're saying, well, fuck, they just did this and now I got no say. And then suddenly they're saying, it's always the same stuff anyway, but you're always treated like shit. Change the fucking say. If that's what you got to do for now, I'm not saying it's the best way to do it, but if there's a prick that's sitting in a seat that shouldn't be in that seat, talk to your friends, talk to the people who are affected by it. Go over there at the poll, vote, get his ass out of there, put someone there you can trust, and then see, find ways to make change. There's got to be. But if you just keep those decision makers in there who are constantly fucking you in the ass, and you're not trying to fucking get them out of there, it's almost like you get fucked in the ass, you know? So you got to do something in order to make that change. Sometimes you got to knock them the fuck out of that seat, you know?
So I completely agree with you, right? But on the other hand, I got involved in local politics last year because I was curious.
Right.
I started interviewing local politicians to get a scope of what shit was going on. And I thought about who I wanted to vote for and this, that, the next thing. Bro, it's wild. First of all, nobody votes. Like we're talking, like my community's NDG Côte-des-Neiges. We're 160,000 people, and it's like 28% of us voted in a good year, which is fucking wild to think about, right? But that means motherfuckers be winning elections on like numbers of votes where if all the drunk 18-year-olds got together as a joke could elect Homeboy and win. Like it's actually that fucking wild that I've thought about it, and I don't know if I want to do it because I don't want to win, but I thought about joke running, but then you might win, and it's a scary thought because you're fucking stuck with that shit now.
Yeah. Now you got a job, and there's when we're talking about that, it's really, really interesting to talk about majority governments and whatnot. Legault won the last election. I think 38% of the voting population voted. 38%. He got a majority out of 38%. So he got less than 20% of the voting population in Quebec in order to be majority government. How fucking crazy is that? He doesn't represent every fucking voter that got there. All those parties that receive votes together don't represent Quebec. How the fuck do we have somebody there with less than 20% of the approval rate of majority voters as the decision maker in this fucking place? Whose fault is that? We don't go out and fucking vote. That's our fucking fault. This is my idea.
Also, we just got to throw in that one other part if we're going to talk about Quebec. The map, bro. Because, like, the reality is Montreal never voted Legault.
Absolutely not.
And that's half the population in Quebec, or a giant chunk of it in the greater Montreal area is, like, there. And, okay, fine, you leave, like, fucking Quebec. Maybe some of Laval might have voted for Legault. I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, like, Quebec's like 8 million people, and the largest chunk is almost so underrepresented that it creates this futility of voting when your vote isn't worth as much as the dude that's up in Nord du Quebec.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is my take on voting in a democracy. In order for a democracy to be successful, you cannot have a majority government.
Okay.
This is my idea, because this way it forces all the parties to sit down and have consensus. And consensus is a democracy. When people have to sit down, negotiate, understand, and agree to something. But when we need to come to a vote that requires consensus, or requires majority, it's a whole different game. So 5 out of 9 makes a decision. That means you have 4 people that are fucking pissed, right? But if you had to come to consensus on the issue, if you had to fucking agree on the issue, that changes everything, right? So by having minority governments in power, those places have to agree with each other. They have to talk. They have to make arrangements that are best for all Quebecers, all Canadians, all Americans, whatever the fuck it be.
And just like to add to that, that's actually pretty commonplace in non-North America. Like, that is how most European countries work. Like, the UK government's fucking wild. There's like 18 parties and coalitions. The Israeli government's insane. It took them like 5 elections to reactivate. Like, we're kind of the weirdos with our systems over here.
Yeah. It's fucking dumb. But we can fix that as voters. We can. This is what I would like to see in the upcoming election. I think it's October 5th. Is that it? Somewhere, it's in October. Now, what I would love to see is Indigenous communities show up to vote, okay? Just in the swing areas, just in those counties where the Conservatives won by 200-300 votes, okay? I don't give a fuck what party it is. If it's Liberals, Green Party, I don't give a fuck what it is, okay? But that community, just vote for the competitor of the CAC, just so they lose their counties, so they lose majority government eventually. Where
there's got to be a way to. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. That can work if you make it fucking easy for people. What I mean is, people are gonna have all kinds of excuses because I'm really into this idea. You're getting my brain going in like strategy mode now. Like, my whole tone changed and shit. So like, if we created a website that was able to like load up the shit and say this is who you vote for if you're going against the CAC for the next majority, the whatever, then people could just look the day of and go, okay, that's who I have to go to vote for. That might work. Because motherfuckers be wildly lazy. Like, you create an email notification system that fucking sends them fucking notifications the day of and shit. Almost an app. Like, that would work. That would bother people.
That would be the scariest thing for politicians.
However, people have to be registered to vote like now. Like, they have to get that shit fucking taken care of like now, because they will fuck you up day of election type shit. They will make it so impossibly hard for you to get that dealt with if you wait till like a couple of weeks for when your voting card don't come in.
Yeah. I want to get back to the music part of this and talking about voting and talking about
hip-hop. Oh yeah, for sure.
But this is an important link that I'm going to try and make right now. Hip-hop, the seeds, the origins, is about social change. It's about creating change. It's about the issues that need to be addressed. It's about bringing them to the world. It's about dealing with shit, right? So those issues. So it's always been a science in there, that there's always been a truth about it to fixing your community, right? Of course, gangster rap came after, but let's talk about where it's coming from, all right? And now let's look at right now. This summer, I have a bunch of shows coming up. This is what I would like to do. Is the shows that I have coming up at the festivals I'm playing, I'd love to see voter registration tables set up.
Fucking A! I like that.
Where youth can come in. I don't care what age you are, but you're at the concert tonight, and we have 2 people working these tables just to take voter registration. And me as an artist doing my responsible thing and on the mic saying, you motherfuckers want change? You want the cack out of this motherfucker? Please go to the booth. Please register to vote. Please be ready. The election is here in October, and we're changing the fucking world together. That's using art to change politics within your community with hip hop.
Yeah, that might have been one of the hottest, whatever amount of time that was of my whole Twitch. That was hot. Bro, that idea is next level.
That's what I believe needs to happen. And that's what I intend on doing. I got to get the right people in motion, making this happen in the different counties and the different places. But that's what I'd like to do.
So, hold on. DJ Magnanimous just came in and said, do we trust the voting system, though? We don't, but we don't trust the CAC. And so the idea is, do you really want this government in charge? And honestly, DJ Magnanimous, Did you know that Quebec judges no longer have to speak English? Did you know that that's a real thing that got snuck in recently? Like, yo, arguably almost sometimes, okay, here's another angle that we didn't even talk about. So I learned about how there are investors who will put money behind candidates if they believe that that person will get elected. So here's what would happen if all of a sudden, I don't know, 20,000 people voted that never voted before. You would become the new majority that gets catered to in the next election because all of a sudden the data. So all of a sudden politicians will be talking to millennials like you've never seen before. All of a sudden everything would get stacked with us because they would think you vote. Did you know that they don't go to anybody but people with houses with kids because they're the only people that vote? So it's the circular system of advertising where unless you're a homeowner with kids, you're never even spoken to. And they could do it differently, but why would they? Because there's no investment. So what you would do is be on the docket creating stats that would be actionable in a data-centric world because unlike all times in the past, numbers rule everything around us now. And just having that shift, and you could co-sign this is true, would be enough to make the investments change.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that should we be skeptical? We need to always be skeptical. We need to always never trust the system.
Facts.
That's how we keep it honest. We're going to see things going on that we're going to need change. When we're creating change, we're going to see things that, are unforeseen and that are going to be hard to make smooth. That's fine. That's how it's supposed to be done. That's how change is created. It's not supposed to be comfortable. It's not supposed to be easy. But we got to do something about it because you know what's worse than having to go through the uncomfortable emotion of change? The worst thing you could do is sit idle in a fucking cesspool.
All I'm saying is when you look at it from a stat point of view, it looked like young people don't vote. When you talk to the politicians directly, they go, I want to talk to the young people, but they don't vote. And like everybody seems to want the young people to vote, including the politicians who are almost begging them to vote so they can represent them properly to the people with money. And I don't know why. I don't know how to make an 18-year-old give a shit about voting. Maybe what you're what you proposed is actually one of the hottest ideas I've ever heard. Like, make it cool through hip hop or some shit.
and make it cool in the sense that you don't have to fucking vote conservative. You don't have to vote liberal. You don't have to vote NDP. There's other fucking parties there too. If that more suits your
there's usually even independents in most places.
Yeah. The goal in your mind should not be having a majority government. Should always be calculated in a way to prevent a majority government. You know, that's the way it is. You want fair treatment. Those companies, they're running liberal parties and conservative parties. These are old parties with a lot of money's tied into industry. They don't give a fuck about you. Okay, they give a fuck about industry. So keep that in mind, but keep them accountable. And if you don't vote, you can't hold them accountable. It's really, really a weird system. But if people were to be more loud, what gets me sometimes is I see a lot of people who show up at protests that I attend who never attend a poll, never go voting. And why take the time to be freezing outside with me on the streets if you don't take the 5 minutes to vote? Because that vote is just like...
And actually, I know there's this stigma about voting taking a long-ass time, but that's like deaded for so long that it's not really a real thing, at least here.
We'll wait fucking 2 hours in line to get fucking weed at the weed shop.
But bro, like the last 8 elections I did were like so in and out that like there's just nobody there. You walk up, maybe there's like 4 old people and you're in line, and then you walk in and it's this empty auditorium. And there's just nobody ever there, and nobody's ever voting.
It's always old people. Well, imagine, you were talking about an app a while ago. As long as those people are in power right now, there will never be an easy app for us to vote because they prefer that the young people don't
So vote. Here's the one thing I can say to counter that is, and it's something I've thought a lot about, because there are resources, and like if people like you and I created the resources outside the government, then you have the added benefit of goodness. Like for some reason, the city of Montreal just really doesn't want to invest in their website to make it good or easy so that you can find all this shit. I don't know if it's negligence, if it's old people, or if it's deliberate, or if it's all three. But I think old people is the real answer, to be honest with you, because the average age of politicians is like old. Like we're talking grandma. They're like begging young people to go into politics, and none of us want to. I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
But
But if we can get in there, if we get enough young people voting for change and voting for candidates who are perhaps younger and with new ideas, eventually we'll have those apps. Stay the fuck home and vote. Whatever the fuck it be.
Well, what I meant more is an informational app. So, like, let's say the government's not going to create an informational app. Like, we can just document the process and create the app. Like, apps aren't that hard to make anymore. I don't know the actual level of effort. I'm spitballing an idea, but arguably this could be created if people wanted to organize and do it, and then it would be like, and I'm sure there's even websites already that just have all this shit ready to go. Like, are you registered to vote? And it checks the database. Okay, if not, here's how you do it. Okay, if not, and then as far as people to vote for, that's just basic math shit. It's like an easy ass thing to create. So like all of this is simple to do. It's just a matter of having that group of people to want to do it, because most of us get these ideas, we run solo, we get tired, and not many of us are good at upscaling our lives into businesses in the way that you are. So it's hard to find those passionate people to work together to create these bigger ideas. But that's kind of, it's cool that you've said all this, because it's really inspired me. Because I was kind of like loafing on some of this political stuff. Like, I don't know what to do with it. But just even talking to you, it's like, yeah, I suppose we should be trying. Can't be forgetting about this shit. Quebec is having an election, and nobody's going to give a shit about it again.
Yeah. And that scares me, man. And it scares me, like I said, probably because I have kids, and they're growing up through it. Right now, I got my oldest boy's going to be 21 years old, man. He's living in Montreal. He's in a law program right now. So he's studying over there. My niece is over there. My niece is like my sixth child. I've taken her in since she was 14 years old. But she's in university over there now. I have another one who graduates next year. And then the year after that, I have another boy who's graduating. And they're going to have to deal with all the decisions that these fucking assholes make.
Facts.
They're going to have to deal with any decision for students, their lives that they're going to be, just starting out as young adults. I think it's important. It's important that we hold those people accountable for that generation. I think it's my responsibility.
I definitely feel that. I don't want to forget your music career, because, like, arguably that's a huge reason why you're here. And I mean, we're 90 minutes deep now, and don't get me, because usually it goes the other way. Usually we do the music shit and flip into the super awesome part. My favorite part's always after that part where we get into the good shit. But like, your life is the good shit, and then the music starts, which is like, okay, that's wild. And so you said that 2018 is when you started. You had to unfortunately wait for your father to pass, which is the situation due to the relationship of family structure and the influence that he has. Also, the respect you have for him, because that's respect on your end, which is respectable, honestly.
Yeah, cultural respect and cultural obligation. That's how it is. This is what he's seen, and that's what I did. And actually, when I left politics, he was very, very upset with me. He was pretty angry, because that wasn't what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be there forever. And I was like, nope, can't do it. So he already sensed that I was going to just do my own thing.
Right.
So even though it took a little bit longer than it should have, but that's the way it goes. But yeah, so in 2018, that's when I said, fuck this. There's no restraints. There's no holding back. And I'm going to say exactly what I want to do. I believe if he was here, he would have understood the route I was down more now. You know what I mean? Like, he'd understand, because I'm still dealing with the issues. I'm still tackling all of the problems, but just through a different lane. That's all. I get invited out onto TV, like places like La Tour with Patrick Huard and whatnot, to go and talk about issues of Indigenous things. I had the friggin' Minister of Indigenous Affairs from Quebec on that show when I called him out, and I told him straight to his face. I said, you shouldn't even have that job. Shouldn't. I don't know why you got that job. And there was a Indigenous woman, Michelle Odette, that was sitting right next to him. I said, she should have your job. She's fucking the one that should have the job, not a white guy telling us what we're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like that's always the case we have. This is a non-Indigenous person telling us how to work. But point being, I'm as an artist, I'm still involved in the politics. I'm still creating the change, and I think at a faster pace than I was in politics. Sure,
Yeah,
with art.
I can see how that makes sense though, because arguably you get to have influence in a very different capacity, but it's cooler. I mean, I don't know that as a politician you could have had the same interview that you would have as a rapper. To be honest, it's completely
Absolutely.
different. I can't even smoke weed on those ones because it's like you gotta have that respect and understanding of what you're dealing with. Like it's a different vibe. You don't swear the same because you don't know who's watching and you don't want to have that weird ass like the parents judge you shit. But as an artist, you
Yeah.
can come through and your music's strong, right? Like you got like straight out fuck the government protest, we coming for you type shit, and it was like
Yep.
unapologetic. I used that term
Yep.
before, but that's and I really like that about it. But how did you like actually migrate into taking it seriously? Like, what was the beginning of it?
Um, like I said, the beginning is a lot earlier, and so working with Music Nomad, which is an organization, it's a nonprofit organization out of Montreal. Um, they're a cousin of WAP Coney, which also creates videos with Indigenous communities. So Music Nomad goes and they create music, produce music with Indigenous artists across the province. Even now, they're branching off to other provinces. So I had already been working with Music Nomad way back in 2010. Their first gig was in Giskabigia when they first established this Music Nomad thing. The director at that time contacted me and said, "Look, we'd like to do this. Are you interested?" I said, "Come on down," and managed to put 11 artists from Giskabigia, from my community, on record. They each, produced some music and everything was good. That sort of was their breakthrough as Music Nomad. They used the production there as their promo to go and do other communities. And then it started getting stronger and bigger. And now it's very, very big. And they work with a lot of artists and they do all kinds of stuff. So I had already known Music Nomad. They already knew me. And they knew that I was already interested in music. In the productions at home, I would help the artists because I still had an ear and I do a lot of writing and poetry. So I would help them out as we went. So they knew I was already always into that, right? So when it was time for me to record, I already had a shit ton of songs. I mean, you can imagine 20 years of songs and material and shit that you might have been writing just to yourself. So I just called them up and I said, "Look, it's time to make some music. Let's do it." That was it.
And then,
And it was at a time of political uncertainty within my community and politically with federal elections and the whole bit. And I just felt like, all right, I need to use this platform in order to do what I've always done.
so you start recording and you start publishing your music videos, and it's politically motivated. So your goal is to share a message. How do you actually go about promoting it?
Um, that's the harder part, right? It's not very easy to promote that type of music. It's really hard to get that in there, especially from an Indigenous community, because in my music, I call out band councils as well, and I'll call them crooks, and I'll call them government puppets, and I'll call the people who are being corrupt. I call a fucking spade a spade, and that's how it is. But I do that federally, I do that locally, I do that provincially. It doesn't matter. If you fucking feel like I'm pointing at you, it's you who got something to fucking answer to yourself. You know what I mean? I'm not writing towards anybody, but if the shoe fits, fucking wear it. So it's hard for people in Indigenous communities to listen to that if you are the one in power. So let's say if I want to go on tour on reserves and I've got some music that is really strong against chief and council, they're not necessarily going to want me in their fucking community saying some of the shit I say that makes them look bad. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to fit into a place, but I understand that I don't have a specific niche. I just do what I do. And sometimes people like to hear it. Some people are woke enough to understand it. Some people are not. Some people don't want to hear that shit. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, I generate my revenues from other sources. I have businesses. So I don't rely on this as an income. I rely on it as a platform for change and sharing a message.
Have you ever like toured outside the reserves?
Yeah, shit. Willie and I went over to fucking France, man. We were over there in 2019, right, Will? I don't know if Willie's still there, but Willie and I went up to France. We toured all over there, into Quimper and in Bretagne. I think that's what they call it, Bretagne. So we're over there. I've been, played music a little bit all over the place. So it's pretty cool.
Nah, it is super cool. And you basically, because you started in 2018 and you got to go to France like the year after,
Yeah.
because Willie's set up for that.
No.
Or
I had I was always, like I'm saying, like I was always involved with community
okay,
organizers and
so,
here and there.
so you just
So
have the network.
and they just approached me. They're like, "Hey, there's an availability to go to France. You interested?" And I was like, "Fucking." Willie and I had met at a few venues in Montreal. We didn't even know each other. We're just passing by, and we're like, and then that's how we got to know each other. And then,
Okay.
then it was like, "Hey, you want?" Oh, our first tour actually was in the Gaspésie together. Before we went to France, there was myself, Willie, Dayby.
No way.
Uh,
I'm about to meet
yeah,
Daybye for the first time on Saturday because we got booked at the same shit. And I know the guy from the internet, but I never like met him.
yeah. So we did a tour in the Gaspésie the first time. I think like maybe 4 shows or something like that because the Gaspésie is pretty spread out. And after that, there was the opportunity to go to France. So called Willie and the Beat Vandals. And that's what we did. We went to France. It was really cool. It was fun.
And
Yeah.
so I guess then COVID kicks in and obstructs like the whole live event life for the last 2 years.
Fucking killed it, dude. I had a new album that came out in November, I think, of 2019 or 2000. Yeah, I think it was. I'm so lost. No, November of 2019. Gamazi, my album came out, and we were set to go on tour in the springtime of March. And of course, everything shut down.
So you just dropped the Imagination project, if I'm not mistaken. That was pretty recent.
Yeah, March 18th. Yeah.
Which honestly, it's a really cool project. I like your use of skits a lot. They really added ambiance and it said a lot of different things. And kudos to you for like bragging about your mom, not just doing a mom song, bragging about your mom and shit. That was really fun. But
Cool,
like,
man. Thank you.
tell us a bit, I guess, about the project and how you got to that point of creating it. And I guess, did you drop it now because the world opening up and you can go tour again?
Actually, man, I was fucking itching for like you give an artist 2 fucking years of not doing much or not being able to or almost opening up to do something and then closing the fucking door again. So it'd been a while that I'd working on the fucking project, and actually I ended up making 3 projects. I have 3 albums coming out in the next couple months. So it's just boom, boom, boom. So Imagination was the first one that was coming out, and I wanted it to be a collaboration album with artists who I respect a lot and people who I just think are beautiful people. They really represent something in their communities, in their nation, and they have good values. And so I really wanted to make a project with these people. And so there's Willie Scandals in there. There's Hyper T, who's an Inuk rapper from the north. Simon Nevin, who's a Mi'kmaq drummer. There's Sensei H, who's Algerian. She's a barbarian descent. She's really cool.
Yo,
She's here in
she's
Quebec.
ill. I saw her live one time. Fucking flawless. Crush that shit. Like,
She is amazing. Yeah, she's a sweetheart of a person. Wendigo is on there. Stun is on there. David Strickland himself is on there, and Strickland produced all all of the beats. He did the mixes on it. The mastering were done by, and the mastering and all the interludes were done by Emmanuel Alias, who's my drummer and my producer, and also the lead man of his own band called Alias. So he did the mastering on the album. He's involved on everything I do. He's like a brother to me, and so yeah, this album meant a lot to me. I think I wanted to deal with some issues. Obviously, Imagination, the song itself, it's like imagine, it's written nation, right? Imagination. So all of these different individuals from different indigenous nations coming together to make an album, speaking on the same album, I thought was a collective idea of change, right? And so we're addressing systemic change. We're addressing the issue of murdered and missing Indigenous women, drugs, lateral violence. It's all in there, So suicides, it's all in there.
yo,
So
the
I like to
suicide
talk about,
hotline skit.
yeah.
That's a real one.
Yeah, it's fucked, dude. But so that's it. I like to talk about taboo shit. If you don't want to talk about it, there's a good chance I want to talk about it.
I mean, I feel that. Like, to me, it's not, like, taboo. It's just you spitting on societal issues that need to be talked about. But then, like, okay, yeah, but I'm taboo. So I'm like, okay, no, if I'm not into it, it's probably not that safe for work.
Yeah, that's it.
It's in that NSFW, spit that real shit. Like, ain't nobody want to talk about how the resources are bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I've had friends tell me, I've had other fellow hip hoppers tell me, dude, why don't you just spit that fun shit, man? You're fucking talking about issues. I'm like, well, I'm having fun in life already, man. But I feel the responsibility to use that for that, So that's why. But I do make some fun tracks, but you'll hear them on another album.
I mean, I think it's always important to show that revolutionaries can have fun, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's like something I think people forget about. If you're hard all the time and you never smile, like, it's actually like nobody want to be that, which is a weird thing to say, but like I think a lot about the artist marketings and the branding, and I went through the phase where I realized that maybe I need fun songs and maybe I need this songs, and I found there's just ways to just showcase it and do it in your own style that stays true to your value, but that's hard. And that's why a lot of people want to do vapid fun songs. But, like, yo, you could, like, turn up to Rebellion. Some of my favorite turn-up songs are, like, yo, do you actually listen to what they're saying on this? That's some wild shit. Like, when you could trick them, that, it's a terrible example, but have you ever listened to Party Up by DMX? Like, have you ever actually listened to that shit? Like, this guy...
Not really listen to it, man.
Because it's, like, fucking straight up killing you on every fucking bar, but you're turning up at the club to it. It doesn't make sense. But you could do the same thing with politics. Like, it's kind of like what Public Enemy was doing. There might have been a cooler example because they'd be, like, turning up to politics.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I found a way to do it. Like I said, when I'm out touring, when I'm out doing shows, I'm there with a band, because my soul is rock and roll, and I love the sound of the real instruments, right? And I love the vibe of being with a tribe on stage, and the communication that's going on when I'm out there with my band and changing things up on the fly. You know how it is. Sometimes you just want to change something up, and you're feeling that vibe right there where you can't necessarily do it with the beat maker, just with the press play.
You just have to press play. That's what you're stuck with.
Yeah, that's right. But when I have my band out there, I can feel the vibe, and I just say, I want a fucking guitar solo now. And I just point at my guitarist and they just slam onto it, or my keyboard player just do the same thing, or the drums, whatever, maybe all together. I had a show in Quebec City last summer. I was doing my show, and I just they were just slamming it out. So I just lit up a cigarette and I got off stage and I let them fucking jam for a few minutes, and it was wild. It was just loud and fucking wild, and people were moving everywhere. Finished my cigarette and I came back up and I finished the song. So it's just that you can do that with a live band that you cannot do with just a DJ, And,
well, you can you can do that if you have your DJ. You can't do that with a DJ, because there is the version of it with your DJ where you guys can set up shit and you can pull that aesthetic off, but it probably isn't quite the same as the band. No, I'll give you that.
No, that's for sure. But so it's different. But this album, I'm dropping my next album April 22nd. It's called The Storm. And that is fucking loud, and it's pretty fun too. We just recorded a music video for it this past weekend, and it's a drinking song, and so you're certainly going to see a different side of Q, and but you see the whole band. The video is fun. It's a fucking blast, and that's actually the album that I'm going to be touring, because collaboration album, you can't be with everybody all the time. Right. And I think I got like a dozen shows set up. So it's, at these different festivals around Quebec. So it's like, this is going on. I need to have a solid set. So I didn't want to be playing old shit going up on there. So I had to make a new album with the band and just a tour, right? And we're hitting issues, obviously, but we're having fun at this one time. I can let you listen to a song. I don't know if you can hear it.
I have to set up the way that you can share the I'm gonna click some buttons and you'll be able to share play sound and they'll hear it. But actually, I have to set up screen sharing for you, and then you have to share your audio with me. So if you click on share screen,
What if I just send you the file?
you could do that, and it's probably easier. That's facts.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to send it to your messenger right now.
Awesome. I don't know if Messenger's a little. I can figure that
It's
out.
just like a we transfer.
Oh yeah, WeTransfer is good. Cool. I can fuck with WeTransfer. Cool.
Send you a we transfer, and people here get an exclusive.
Bro, you're like mad set up, bro. Coming with the WeTransfers and things. Like I was like, is he gonna send me an audio file right now, and then I have to figure out how to play a voice chat? Nah, he's coming with the WeTransfer. He's talking all that. I got booked all over Quebec in festivals. Man, we all be like, yo, I got the bar hookup coming up this week. You're like, I got like 12 shows lined up. I'm like, that's cool. I'm happy that like the dude who went through all the politicking and networking shows that by politicking and arguably networking, you can in fact create an entire situation, but also later on in life too, right? That's the more interesting part, is because you're not like young. You're just like, I got in the game fucking late, and I'm gonna take over. Fuck all of y'all.
I'm just doing what I do, and you can call it what you want. I don't give a fuck. I know what I'm doing. I know that much, and I'm having a blast doing it, and I'm proud of what I'm doing, and I think that's important.
And it is, because arguably you're mission driven, and being mission driven forces you to think outside the box. Like, yo, I wouldn't be here talking to you if it wasn't for that mission driven like idea, right? Like, I had to network, so I started interviews, because how am I gonna get a guy like Q-052 to come tell me a story if I don't have a platform or some shit, right? And all things considered, it like cascades into a situation. But I was facing a situation where it's like, yo, I don't know anybody. What am I gonna do? So you have to start thinking different, and you have to start going out, because it's like, it's not even about money. I want money because it's a tool, not because I want money. Like, it's like, arguably, I want to hire like 12 people because I have grandiose dreams. It's not the same thing as I want to get rich.
That's so accurate, man. I'm happy to hear that. And it's so fucking true what you're saying.
Because I do want to go on tour. Hold on, I'm loading a file. It might be loud. I don't know how loud that is. Let me lower that a bit. Is that good for you?
Yeah.
All right, good. I like that. That's fun.
Cool. Yeah. So, and we recorded that in like an hour. That's from start to finish, drinking and having fun, right? So that's what happened.
Yeah.
So there is some music there too, but with a different vibe.
Yeah, I think it's important. Revolutionaries gotta have fun too.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like I mean, like it sounds like a wild thing, but like even on like a politicking front, if like it could be fun to change the world, more people are gonna try to change the world. I know it's like not the it's hard, but it doesn't have to be miserable, you know. And I think that's something that people are trying to hint at a lot when they're talking to rappers about fun songs is that sometimes things are miserable when they don't need to be. Like not
yeah,
everything is like you can be angry and with good cause, but like not everybody's angry with good cause in their music. They're just angry in
yeah.
their music, which is not the same thing. But you definitely have a vibe there. It is absolutely on that country type of stuff where I'm like, oh boy, if that came on the show, I'm waiting for the next one a little bit. But all things considered, it's really fun. It's really
Yeah.
well made, and I can objectively fuck with it.
Cool, man. I'm happy to hear that.
Your
Thank you.
vocal delivery is ridiculous, though. Like you're singing, like the way like, you can feel the drunk energy coming out of you, and like
Oh yeah. It wasn't a lie, dude. It was real, you know, and it was fun. But there's that's more of fucking groovy kind of like you
it's
say,
fun.
got that hillbilly into it. Yeah, it's fun. And the other tracks on that album are a little bit more ragey, a little bit more. But there's fuck, it's really hard to explain because it's just something we decided to do, you know,
I
and
feel
it turned
like
out pretty.
I love how maybe it's because of how you started this off, describing how disconnected you were from the world. You were kind of had the country, whatever, and you were forced to get whatever music you could, but you weren't like caught up in trends in the same way. But it just feels like you're able to not follow conventional genre norms with the way you're approaching your career. And I've always
Yeah,
fucked with that because I grew up liking a lot of kinds of music. I mean, I love hip hop. It's probably gonna be number one on some technicality shit, but like low key punk and EDM are like right next to it, and I love pop music too. So like, it's not like
yeah.
I'm just into one music. So like, I would love to be able to create like all these musics.
Well, why don't you?
I mean,
Why do you
working
feel
on it.
like the
No, I mean
yeah,
I
but you
do, I
should
do,
be
but like I in my career I'm fucking around with whatever I want to do. I have a few
yeah,
lanes, but like in the sense of it, people don't feel like they can, and
yeah,
people act weird when you try to. But then the kids are acting really different. The kids are like, Psh, if they don't know what I'm doing next, it's a smart thing, and I'm like, that is a smart thing. Why am I
yeah.
being predictable? Why are the 20-year-olds giving me all this good advice? Let's run it. But like so no, I mean I'm with it, but people hold themselves back because I think like up until what YouTube, everybody would go to the department of the store that had the genre they affiliated with in high school, and
It's so crazy.
arguably old people and not young people define their cultural identities via genre in a way that young people don't. So young people can just like what they want, and old people are like, "Psh, I was a punk in high school, so I dressed this way, and I love these bands because my homeboys did." And that's some real
Yeah,
shit. That's why you only ever see this weird allegiance shit with old people. You don't have the same
yeah,
phenomenon with young people because they just like artists or songs. They don't fucking care about the genre like that.
yeah. It don't have to be. It's funny, you know, when you say that. My mom, the thing that she like, one of the things she repeat all the time, drive her fucking nuts, is you know, like she just tell me straight up. She'd be like, Jesus Christ, can't fit you in any fucking box. You know, it can get you like it can get you like into one place or like a category of anything, you know, and drive her fucking crazy sometimes, you know. But she say that all the time. So now my big response to my mom all the time when she's like, so let's say if I'm planning to go back to the Gaspé Z, she's like, oh, you coming home? I said, yeah, I'll be coming home next weekend. Oh, when are you coming? Friday or Saturday? I don't know, Friday or Saturday. She was like, well, morning or evening? When I'm ready, when the kids are in order, everybody got their shit in order. It was like, I won't fit in that box of I have to leave at 7 a.m. All my kids have to be packed and everything. Like, there's a lot of lives doing different fucking things. How can I fit all of that into one cookie cutter to say I'm going to be there exactly for this time? As far as I'm concerned, am I going to be missing a meeting? Am I missing a wedding, a funeral, a family? If it's nothing, no, I'll get there when I get there, you know? So my mom drives her crazy. You know, a lot of people, they don't like that. They
That
need
would
things
drive me
structured.
crazy.
Yeah. See,
I'm like
I'm
brainwashed into structure, and my whole life is need. Actually, I have to go socialize now, and it's fucking me up. I got less like isolated and more communal with my moves, but that means I have to talk to people. Like Willie showed up, like, yo, Holden, I know it's late, but I need this, and I'm like, fuck, I said I would do that. I know it's late, but let me go do that, and it just, it's what it is. So stuff pops up you can't plan for all the time, but I still love planning as much as I can.
Oh man, I don't mind the planning, but my wife too, she drives her crazy. And like the shoot that we did this weekend, it's with my band. There's, so as we're setting up, we're supposed to meet there at 3:30. Of course, the boys show up like 4:15, but one of the guys shows up at 5:30. And so we do the scenes that we don't need to have everybody in, do all that. My wife is like, what the fuck? He's not here. He's not here. I said, don't worry. He's going to be here when he gets here. I'm okay with that vibe of, you know what? Everyone's going to get here. Things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out. And we're going to make the best of it. And that's how it's going to be.
Yeah. I'm like,
okay with that shit.
I need people like you to balance me out because I'm the other side, that neurotic or forward thinker that goes 20 years in the future and tries to follow the plan as detailed as possible, but needs somebody to remind me that life is...
I think it's important to have a plan. Like we had a plan. We had a structure. We knew what we wanted to do, but we just need to leave room for things to happen, right?
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm just terrible. It's just not comfortable. I don't like it. I know that it's part of the process. I get what it is. And I have guys like Willie and I keep people around. Like my girlfriend, holy shit, does she not believe in leaving on time? I don't want to like start nothing, but she's so much more respectful now about like the anxiety it might cause me. And I'm trying to be not a shithead about it, but holy fuck, it doesn't matter what time I want to leave at, no matter what, like for the longest time. And you know what? Every time she was right. It didn't matter.
Right.
Every time I was an anxious mess for no good reason, and then she was annoyed with me. That didn't change shit. I'm just like, sometimes like, I like to be early to shit because I don't know, somebody brainwashed that shit into me, and it makes me fucking feel weird, like a guilt when I'm late or whatever. But yeah, no, it's the balance of it, right? But that also comes with a different side where it creates like these strengths and weaknesses, I find, because she's maybe not always structured and forward thinking, and so the balance of life.
Yeah, and that's it. My wife is that balance for me too. We need that in our lives, right? Yin and yang, we need that shit.
Yeah, facts. And I appreciate it too, but I also appreciate folk like that. Like most of the people I actually work with on projects end up being more like that, like who just like, hold on, why are you stressing this shit? It'll happen when it happens. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? The world is ending right now. I'm like,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you don't need to hurry up, man. We need to try and slow down. That's what we need.
And you know what? You're probably right. I'm not even saying I live right. Like, I'm kind of aware that, like, a lot of us are hardwired with these anxieties that don't make sense. It's irrational, but it's still there.
Yeah, we can't prevent ourselves from feeling it. Right. It's there. We're going to live it. How we deal with it, fuck, man. Shit, everybody's got a different way of dealing with shit.
That's facts. Yo, man. Yeah. I really appreciate you, Q-052. Do y'all have any questions for Q-052? Oh, one thing we didn't talk about, because I actually saw it on a website, so it didn't dawn on me to ask, but was what your name is.
Quentin.
No, but the Q-052 part and what that represents.
Okay. Q is for Quentin. That's my first name, Quentin. And 052 is the government number of my community. So if you ever hear about, the famous term band number, somebody's in the status number, there's their number. Every Indigenous person in Canada has a number to them that identifies them to the government. So the government can keep track of how many Indians are in the country. Now, in order to do that, they need a number to communities in order to identify those memberships to the communities, each person to the community. So Giskabigia, my community, the number is 052. And then the digits that follow that, there's 7 digits that follow. That's my personal number. That I won't give that out here.
No, of course not.
So
that's like a social insurance number for y'all.
Sort of, but it's more of a tracking number because every Canadian has a social insurance number and every American has a social security number. but every Indian has an additional number in order to keep track of the amount of Indians in the country, because they need to maintain a count on the problem that they have.
Fascinating. And you're saying
Yeah,
that from the more control perspective of it, to not let it, because if they don't know how large your population is, they can't plan.
absolutely. And that's how they make their budget at Indian Affairs, right? So the amount of people and the budget that they have, they coincide. They make sense to each other, right?
Right. So
So
if they control the census, they control the budget.
exactly.
Do they misrepresent the number? Like, I don't know if that's an issue. Like, I've never really thought about that.
Yeah, I think in a certain way that, the Indian Act is, there are many, many, many people of indigenous descent in this country who don't have indigenous rights. Now, I'm going to give you reason why. Okay, so the Indian Act, as we know it, is a bill that is passed. It's a law that governs the indigenous people, the indigenous population. But they call it the Indian Act just the same. It's so fucking colonial. It's ridiculous. So this law has been in place since 1876. 1867, obviously, is Confederation. The formation of the Indian Act was enacted immediately, but came to law in 1876. So the whole idea behind the Indian Act was to eradicate the indigenous people, keep count of them, assimilate them, and have them become just normal colonized individuals that are part of this commonwealth. Obviously, it wasn't easy to fucking kill us off. We're still here, right? And so this Indian Act had a bunch of laws in it. When you say Indian Act, these are laws that are, books and books and books deep. There's books and books deep because there's so many bylaws and amendments and all kinds of things. But it's a very sexist law. So what they did was they put, like, one example. Fuck, there's so many. I need to narrow this down. But let's say how sexist it is. An indigenous man and an indigenous woman, brother and sister, okay? The sister goes and marries a white man, non-indigenous, and has 2 children. She picks up his name, and those children pick up, even if they don't pick up the name, it's with a white man. Well, those children lose their rights. They're no longer indigenous. They're not recognized by the Bureau of Indian Affairs as indigenous people in this country. Now, the brother goes and has 2 kids with a white woman, and those children have their indigenous rights.
Wait, that's so
And
wild.
they can perpetuate those rights. Now, we know that women live longer and perpetuate the seed, right? They're the ones who give birth. So in this circumstance, what they want to do is make sure the women have their rights removed because they live longer, they procreate, they're the carriers of life. So all of this population that you would see, could you understand if those were just 2 people? Okay, right there. Now, this woman is married to non-indigenous man, has 2 children. Those 2 children go off and they have 6 children each, and then those children all have, 4 kids each, or whatever. Those were potentially all indigenous children, indigenous families, a part of our population. But the government ripped that away. And only the male was able to keep going forward with their part. So we lost half of our population, essentially. I would say 2/3, because women live longer and procreate, right? So they're the ones giving the seed. So this is the way it's always been.
That's a wild thought. I had no idea it worked like that.
Yeah. And there's so many other little things that work like that it's disgusting. So it's rather frustrating. Ultimately, the Indian Act needs to be abolished. It needs to be removed.
Arguably, it's a law from 1876, I think you said, and that is a law from the 1800s, which is like I get it, but people sometimes be dying on some molehills of Confederation where it's like, do you know who these people were?
Yeah. The thing is as Indigenous people, we're not prepared either to abolish the Indian Act because we're not ready. We've been beaten down. We've been victims of cultural genocide, a genocide, where our languages were removed for the most part, our cultural practices, our belief systems, our integrity, our way of life, our autonomy. There's so many things that were taken, and we need to rebuild those things in order to have true autonomy. In order to have true autonomy, though, we had signed treaties with these non-Indigenous governments way before the Indian Act was ever put in place, before Canada was ever born. Okay, so we had treaties that protected us and were designed to share the land. Remember, in 1534, when Jacques Cartier's boat came into the Bay de Chaleur, there's just a few boats of sick people who needed help, who were lost and in a bad way, and our people helped them. And we got them better. We taught them how to live there. They returned. There was a peace. There was time of peace for many years until they brought their war here, right? We were allies with the French. Actually, the Mi'kmaq, when I say Mi'kmaq, that word means allies. Mi'kmaq means allies. We were such allies with the French that they called us les alliés, and their leader had asked us what les alliés was in our language, which was Mi'kmaq. So from that time, they called us Mi'kmaq, but they couldn't say Mi'kmaq, so they said Micmac, you know? But the real name of our tribe, the real name of our nation is Elnuk. Elnuk means human. Back to the point. If we did not want them here, and if we were hostile and inhumane and savage, we would have killed every fucking person there, right then and there, right? But we weren't savage, and we were willing to help other people. It wasn't the first time we had seen newcomers. So that says a lot about Indigenous people, that we were open-hearted and we were willing to help people beyond race. It didn't matter, you know? And we maintained and developed a relationship that was good for many years until they brought their wars here. You know, they brought their wars here, and the English had been allies with, like, say, the Iroquois people, like the Mohawk, and that's where the clashes and the wars would start with our own people again. You know, there's a lot of history that needs to be taught.
Yes, that's interesting. Like, I mean, because it basically parallels what happens everywhere the wars go with the same colonial powers, but we don't really discuss the Like, I mean, I don't even remember if it got touched on in school or anything. I just know, like, what you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And, like, you don't really hear about the symbiotic relationship between Nouvelle France and the people back then. Like, you don't really hear it. You just kind of get painted these really vague pictures. And then the media is what it is.
Not only that, history is perspective.
Facts.
And victors always tell their side of the story first. If we have this discussion today and there's nobody to witness it, just you and I, and we write something down of what happened during this conversation, and I shoot you in the head, take your paper and burn it, my paper is the truth.
Facts. And I've gone down some rabbit holes of ancient history and how little we know, and how we only have, like, we like have entire courses of school projecting on thousands of years of history because, like, 4 people wrote books almost like over a span of 600 years. And that's all we know. Yeah. And we know everything because those guys wrote books, those 4 people. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, we don't even know shit. But then you have like cultures that have oral history, etc. So I don't want to like act like there is, but just for certain parts of history, it really is like that. And I don't think we're taught a lot of accurate shit, you know? Like, all you have to do is talk to Americans about the War of 1812. Every Canadian knows what the fuck went down there, and we fucking burned that shit to the ground. Or not to the ground, we burned that. But none of the Americans hear about that shit.
They don't want to talk about that war. Oh, an interesting war, too, is the fucking Tecumseh warrior was involved in there, man. And you know who Tecumseh is?
Nah.
Shawnee warrior. He's the one that fucking protected the fucking line for the Canadians to win that battle. Him and his 20 warriors, they died on the field against the Americans while the Canadians went back and protected their fort, ultimately protecting Canada. And Canada has never fucking recognized the Shawnee warrior Tecumseh officially. But the Americans who were defeated by him and his warriors, they put a fucking big marble statue of the dying Tecumseh in Washington.
That's not what you would like think, like would give them props. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Canada took full credit of that victory of the Battle of 1812, but Tecumseh died on the battlefield in 1813, protecting that fucking fort, and him and his warriors died on it. And that was while the Canadians ran back to protect their fort.
That's a super amazing fact. I mean, I love the fact that you're teaching us stuff. Willie highlighted a question, so I don't want to forget that because otherwise Willie may feel jilted. But are you comfortable enough, spelt like your song name, to tell us live who is one guest that you had on the river that you would have left for the wildlife to share? I don't actually fully understand what that question means, so you can.
That means like having one of, because I get a lot of high status, high profile people that out onto the river. A lot of celebrities, a lot of politicians, a lot of like.
So he's asking you to name drop a famous person you got to go fishing with.
That I didn't like, and I would have rather let fucking wolves eat.
Oh,
that's what he's asking.
So he's saying it like that. Yo, Willie, you're trying to get me in trouble.
You're trying to get me in trouble too, man.
Willie's like that. That's fair. I didn't fully understand his question. I read the shit verbatim, and he worded it like that because he knew it would get by.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. It was a guy from New York, though. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
Fair enough. Would you write a book? Or would you have plans to write a book?
Yep, absolutely.
You should.
Absolutely.
That would be fire to read.
I do intend on that. Actually, right now, I've worked on, you wouldn't believe it. I worked on 2 children's books most recently. I think one of them is going to be published, I think. This
guy just busted out. I made a children's book, and it's getting published.
Yeah. Oh, this is a great story. I got to tell you it right now.
What?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone was expecting that. And he pulled out this thing?
I made this, all right? This is my doll that I make for my kids to tell them the traditional stories. I'm going to give you the backstory on this, okay? My great-grandfather and my great-grandmother with my grandparents and my dad and all of his siblings, they all lived in a 20 by 24 little house, no basement, with a little loft. They all lived in this. It's many generations. This is a time where they were going to day schools, so residential schools on the reserve. They weren't allowed to speak their language. They weren't allowed to congregate on the streets. They weren't allowed to do anything. They were stuck on the. You need a permission slip to leave the reserve. And they weren't allowed, especially to exercise their cultural activities, which is why we lost so much. Mm-hmm. They would be put in jail, doing and it was a bad thing. So my great-grandfather figured out a way to pass down stories of our nation, our history, our traditional ways of doing things by a doll at bedtime. Okay? So at night, what he would do, at night he would sit down with all the kids on his rocking chair, it's bedtime, and he would take Mustat. He made this character called Mustat. I don't have my grandfather's doll right here. I must have it up in my room. But I have my great-grandfather's doll. I have my grandfather's doll. I have my dad's doll. So each generation makes this doll called Mustat. It's the same character. We make it little different pieces, there's alterations, we got to make our own version of it. It can't be exactly like our father's. And this is how we hand down stories from our nation to our children. So my great-grandfather found this clever trick to be able to talk about how to hunt moose, how to spear eels, how to go salmon fishing, how to make baskets, where to get those things, what time of year, how the moon cycles worked. All of these traditional knowledges that he wasn't allowed to teach. Well, the kids didn't know they were learning it. They thought it was just a story time when they were going to bed, So that's how he was able to maintain our history from our family and whatnot from generation to generation. So it's still passed down through these little dolls.
And so the dolls would perform various actions when relevant to, and he attacked the seal from the left and whatever, and it would just show the proper technique.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, so with oral history, with the doll. You intrigue the child. They understand. So these
That's why the
stories.
attack on your language is so powerfully bad.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So this way, Mustat, now the stories that I write are about Mustat. So they're not even my stories. I'm sharing stories that belong to my great grandfather. And I'm handing them down because they're stories that belong to his father and his father before and his before. So they're not even my stories. I'm just putting them down on paper so that they're not lost anymore. You know?
And do you do this in like English or other like do you, like what?
English, Mi'kmaq, and French.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's really like oh, it just you're an impressive guy, man. Like I talk to a lot of people, I suppose, and don't get me wrong, I talk to impressive people, but whenever you talk to somebody that's just like it's just so unabashedly like purpose driven, it's refreshing, right? Like so often in the world, all we get to see is the social media egotists, right? And you're right. You're not going to get organic reach in ways that are as popular, and you're going to have to do a little bit whatever to get cool. But like, yo, you got that kind of shit that creates that grassroots waves that is really like admirable. And again, like how late you come into it, how much you're trying to do. It's like all I'm trying to do with my life is get to that point where I have the freedom to literally write kids' books because I feel like it.
Yeah. It's important. And get there. And you will get there.
Yeah, facts. No, I mean, I say it because I'm on my way. I wouldn't even be
Yeah.
like saying it if it wasn't in motion. But like, it takes it so everybody's got their own journeys, and you know, sometimes you're like, damn, I wish I didn't have to wake up for work tomorrow. But at the same
Yeah.
time, being in the environment I'm at has been a blessing because somebody got to go learn about that shit. Just the way that you
Yeah.
had to go learn about politics, I had to go learn about business.
Yeah. 100%. And remember, man, we plant seeds with our words, right? And if you don't say
Facts.
it out loud, if you don't say it out loud, they'll never grow.
Yeah, I
They'll never
feel
grow. You gotta say it out loud, and you got to do it.
like people vilify talking about your plans because there are people who just always talk about their plans. But literally everything you're seeing me do today, I visualized, I said it to somebody. Almost every plan you're going to see me do in the future, I literally put on Facebook at some point because I can't help it.
Right?
I'm going to tell all my strategies. Fuck it. I'm
Yeah.
just like that. And then,
Yeah, but you're sending. I think you're just you're putting it out there. You're making your plan.
that's it.
That's okay. You got to plant the seeds, man. You got to plant the seeds.
Plus, you
It
never.
doesn't matter. Who gives a fuck if somebody don't believe in you or not? Who
And
gives a shit? Plant
sometimes
the
I
seeds.
don't even want to do the ideas. I just want them to be. I just want them to be there. You know, like let somebody else run it sometimes. But like, I love
Yeah,
the idea of sharing it. Like, there might just be more qualified people all the time that are there that
yeah,
can just handle it. And I'm not like vain like that. Like I come off sometimes like I'm vain like that. But trust, if you the guy for the job, it's my pleasure to let you do the job. You know, it
yeah.
just makes everybody's life easier.
Yeah, no, that's super cool, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, man. I really love this conversation. I have no idea where to take it, which usually tells me it's a good time to let it wrap up while it's all organic with it. But I felt like you covered everything, man. And then you dropped kids' books at the end. So you like an author, a community leader, a ex-politician, but one that actually secured bags for your community. Honestly, that's a rare. Just think about that for a second. Mans did an entire political run and fucking created sustainability for a community. I don't even think there's like that big of a list of people who could make that flex. I know you don't want to flex, but like arguably you might want to make that track because like
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I really do.
and
Uh,
all of it, man. Like your whole energy is dope too. It's admirable. Like it's cool to talk to you like that for real. Like it's infectiously positive.
cool, man. I'm happy to hear that. Hey, we're gonna hook up in fucking person in Montreal sometime. That's the fucking
Absolutely. I'm all over. I'm at Willie's shows. Apparently, I'm all sucked into the Willie verse and the Holdy verse. They're all
yeah.
intersecting entities, so I'm certain it'll happen in real life. Um, all your links and stuff are like down below in the description. And just for the sake of the audio stuff, it's Quentin Q-U-E-N-T-I-N-C-O-N-D-O 052 on Instagram, and then you can figure it out from there, people of the internet. Otherwise, links in description and all that good stuff. Thank you all for the people out there that were watching live with us. There were like a whole bunch of you that were live with us, and I really do appreciate it because honestly, y'all chatting makes it more of a show and gives me a whole lot more, a little pizzazz, which I think makes it more fun. And then also, thank you watching in the future, people, because you're important too. We still love you, but twitch.tv/behind that suits more lit. Y'all can come through for the lives. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, I'm just preparing my little raid here at the end. Do you have any little last words for the folk before we completely wrap up?
Everything you just said. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Holden, thank you so much, man, for what you're doing. Continue doing it. And peace and love, everybody.
So live long and prosper, everybody.